You walk slowly from the guard quarters along a stone path that runs between two high mud brick walls, their surfaces still warm to the touch after the long afternoon. The heat of the day rises from the packed earth under your sandals, carrying a dry, dusty scent, mixed with something faintly sweet from the date palms beyond the wall. Your steps are unhurried, matching the pace of the hour when the world is neither fully day nor fully night. The path is familiar. You have walked it many times, at many different seasons, and each time the transition feels the same, a gradual letting go of the noise and activity of the palace behind you. A few birds call from the gardens, settling into the acacia trees for the evening, their notes short and unhurried. The walls on either side are tall enough that you can only see a strip of sky overhead, a pale blue deepening at its edges to a soft lavender. You feel the spear in your right hand, the wooden shaft smooth from years of use, its weight a comfortable presence. The leather grip fits the shape of your palm, and the bronze point reflects a sliver of the fading light. After a short while, the walls open up, and you step onto a raised stone platform that looks out over the river. This is your post, a wide flat space with a low parapet made of sun-dried brick, worn smooth by the hands of many guards who have stood here before you. You turn and look back once. Behind you, the palace rises in layers of flat roofs and colonnades, the limestone catching the last golden rays. Somewhere in that complex, the kitchens are finishing the evening meal, and a thin column of smoke drifts upward, but the sounds are already muffled by distance and the thick walls. A servant crosses a courtyard with a water jar balanced on her head, moving slowly. Then she disappears through a doorway. The sight is ordinary, repeated every evening, and you feel no urgency as you turn your attention back to the river. The Nile stretches before you, broad and unhurried, carrying the colors of the sunset on its surface. From this platform you can see a long curve of the water where the current moves gently south to north. The far bank is a dark line of palm trees and cultivated fields, now losing their green to the deepening shadow. The sky above them holds layers of deep orange, pale pink, and a soft gold that seems to hover just above the horizon. There are no clouds, only the gradual shift of color that spreads upward until it meets the pale blue of the day sky. The river itself has turned to a sheet of rippled copper and rose, reflecting the sky with a slight shimmer where the breeze touches it. The surface is mostly smooth. Now and then a fish breaks the water with a soft plop, leaving a ring of circles that expand and fade. You rest the butt of your spear on the stone and let your shoulders settle into a comfortable stance. The air here is different from the enclosed path. It moves freely across the open water, carrying the smell of river mud, wet reeds, and the faintly spicy scent of papyrus crushed under the weight of the current. There is a freshness to it that feels clean against your face after the dry heat of the walls. A few insects begin their nightly chorus from the reed beds below, a steady trilling that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. You lean slightly against the parapet, feeling the last stored warmth of the day radiate from the brick into your forearms. The linen of your kilt moves softly against your legs in the breeze, and the white collar at your neck, made of simple faience beads, shifts slightly with your breathing. You do not need to be alert for danger. The river is quiet, and the evening watch is mostly about presence, about being here while the palace eases into sleep. Behind you, the sounds of daily life are subsiding one by one. The grinding of the millstones in the granary stops, leaving a silence that seems to grow wider. The voices of servants calling to one another in the outer courts become fewer, then fade entirely. The only remaining sound is the distant lowing of an ox from the temple enclosure, a deep, calm note that vibrates across the air and then ceases. You hear the scrape of a wooden bolt being slid into place somewhere in the main gate, a solid, final sound. The palace is closing itself for the night. You are part of that closing, a living door that watches the water while others rest. Your eyes travel across the river to the eastern bank, where the palm trees stand as dark silhouettes against the glowing sky. Their fronds do not move, the breeze is too light to stir them. Below them, the strip of cultivated land is a patchwork of small fields irrigated by channels that lead back from the river. In the last light, you can make out the low shapes of a few mud brick houses, their roofs covered with bundles of dried reeds. A thin trail of smoke rises from one of them, bending slightly as it catches a higher current of air. The scene is so familiar that you could trace it with your eyes closed. The three tallest palms that lean slightly toward the north, the gap in the reed bed where the fishermen pull up their boats, the place where the bank forms a shallow sandbar during the dry season. All these details are part of the long memory of your watch. A single heron lifts from the reeds on the near bank, its wings moving with a slow, deliberate beat. It glides low over the water, so close that you can see the grey of its feathers and the long shape of its neck folded back against its body. It passes directly in front of your post, and for a moment you watch the reflection of its flight in the darkening water, a shadow bird moving in the opposite direction. Then it banks gently to the left and disappears behind a thicket of papyrus. You lose it among the tall stems, and the surface of the river is empty again, holding nothing but the fading colors of the sky. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, a small adjustment that comes without thinking. The spear shaft is cool under your fingers now as the air temperature begins its slow drop. You note the subtle changes. The sun has gone below the horizon, though its light still fills the sky. The orange is thinning into a band of pale tangerine along the western edge, and the pink is turning to a soft mauve. The dark line of the eastern desert is becoming harder to separate from the sky, melting into a uniform deep blue. A flock of small birds crosses your field of vision, flying in a loose, rippling formation, their bodies making quick darting movements as they head towards some roost you have never located. Their calls are high and thin, a series of small notes that fade as they pass. You let your gaze drift across the broad expanse of the Nile, following the path of the current from upstream on your left to the bend downstream on your right. The water is losing its bright reflections, becoming first a deep bronze, then a dark grey with a hint of purple. The ripples catch the last light in irregular flashes, so that the river seems to be breathing, expanding and contracting with a gentle rhythm. There is a peacefulness in this slow transformation, a sense that the world is settling into an older, quieter order. You have seen this change many times, but each evening it feels like a small and private ceremony, performed just for whoever is standing watch. The thought does not stir any strong feeling, it is simply a quiet observation, like noting the position of a familiar star. The first star appears above the eastern hills, faint and steady, a single point of light in the deepening blue. It is so small at first that you are not sure you have seen it, but then it sharpens as the sky darkens around it. You do not name it. The names of stars are for priests and scholars, and you are content simply to see it there, a companion for the night. After a moment a second star appears a little to the left, then a third higher up, each one emerging from the retreating daylight like seeds pushing through dark soil. You rest your chin on your hand, your elbow on the parapet, and let the stars fill your vision without counting them. The eastern hills are now a solid black mass, a long, low shape that anchors the horizon, and above them the sky is becoming a vast, dark dome. The air grows a little cooler, enough that you notice the change on your bare arms. It is not an uncomfortable cold, just a pleasant sharpness that makes the linen feel lighter than before. The smell of the river seems to strengthen as the temperature drops, the muddy aroma mixing with the clean, green scent of water plants and the faint tang of distant cooking fires. From somewhere along the far bank, a dog barks once, a short sound that does not repeat. Then the quiet returns, deeper than before. The insect chorus has steadied into a continuous hum, a background that you stop hearing unless you deliberately turn your attention to it. Your thoughts move slowly, without urgency, drifting along with the current of the river. You recall the face of the guard you relieved, a man whose name you have known for many years. He had nodded to you as he left, already pulling off his wrist guard, eager to eat his evening meal and sleep. You exchanged only a few words about the condition of the post. The spear rack was newly oiled, the water jar was full, nothing unusual to report. Then he was gone, and you were alone. Solitude on the platform is not lonely. It is a form of spaciousness, a chance to let the mind rest on simple things. The river does not ask anything of you, and the stars expect no conversation. You are simply present, a part of the night as much as the heron or the palm trees. You look down at the water directly below the platform, where the stone blocks descend in a series of steps to a small landing. The steps are old, their edges rounded by floods and time, and green algae grows in the cracks that stay wet. In the last dim light, you can see the dark shape of a small skiff tied to a post, floating motionless. The water around it is perfectly still, forming a black mirror that doubles the boat's outline, creating a strange symmetry that your eyes follow without thought. A single fallen palm frond floats near the hull, turning slowly in an invisible eddy. You watch it for a long moment as it drifts a few handspans to the left, then stops, then drifts back. The movement is hypnotic, and your breathing deepens without you noticing. The sky is now fully dark, and the stars are out in their thousands. You can see the broad band of the Milky Way stretching across the heavens, a river of light that mirrors the one below. You have always thought of the two rivers, the one of water and the one of stars, flowing in parallel through the night, neither one ever reaching an end. The constellations you recognize are already in their accustomed places: the plough, the stretched line of pearls, the figure of the Great One with arms outstretched. These are old companions, as familiar as the walls of the palace. You trace their shapes with your eyes, a slow, lazy movement that asks nothing of your mind. A slight breeze returns, carrying the sound of the reeds rustling below. It is a soft, papery sound, like pages of papyrus being shuffled by an invisible hand. The palm fronds overhead make a different sound, a dry rattling that comes and goes. You stand away from the parapet and stretch your arms above your head, feeling the pull in your shoulders, then roll your neck slowly to the left and right. The body feels good after the long stillness, ready for the many hours ahead. You take a few steps along the platform, your sandals making a soft scrape on the stone, and then return to your spot. The spear remains where you left it, leaning against the parapet, its bronze tip catching the faint starlight. The village on the far bank is now invisible except for a single point of light, a lamp burning in one of the houses. It is small and yellow, steady, not flickering. It seems to hang in the darkness without any connection to the ground, a tiny earth-bound star. You watch it for a while, and the longer you look, the more it seems to pulse gently, though you know this is a trick of your tired eyes. The light is a comfort, a sign that the world across the water is also settling into sleep. You imagine the family inside, spreading mats on the floor, speaking in low voices, blowing out the smaller lamps one by one. Then you stop imagining and simply see the light, a single point of warmth in the vast darkness. The evening watch has settled fully into its rhythm. There is nothing to do but be here, to let the hours pass like the water below, each moment indistinguishable from the next. Your mind empties of any particular thought. You are aware of the spear, the stone, the stars, the faint scent of river mud, all blending into a single quiet experience. The heron does not return. The fish stop breaking the surface. Even the insects seem to lower their volume, as if respecting the deep silence of the night. You breathe slowly, in and out, and the air is cool against your nostrils, carrying a hint of the desert's dryness now mixing with the river's moisture. You think, briefly, of the other guards at their posts around the palace grounds, one at the main gate, one at the granary, one at the far corner near the temple. Each of them is standing in a similar silence, watching a different patch of darkness. You feel a quiet connection to them, a shared purpose that requires no words. The system of watches is ancient, unchanged for generations, and you are a small part of it, a single link in a long chain. The thought passes, leaving no residue. Your gaze returns to the water, now a vast blackness that stretches to the unseen far bank. The stars are reflected on its surface, so many that it seems the river has swallowed the sky. You can no longer tell where the water ends and the air begins. The horizon is lost. The current moves steadily, pushing the reflected stars downstream in a slow, continuous migration. A small piece of driftwood, pale and waterlogged, appears for a moment in the starlight, turning slowly, then is gone. You follow its imagined path downriver, past the bend, past the fields, past other villages, all the way to the great delta where the water spreads into 100 channels. But you do not follow it far. Your mind returns to the spot in front of you, to the small circle of awareness that is your duty. The stone under your feet has lost all its day heat now, and the coolness seeps up through your sandals. You flex your toes once, feeling the familiar ache of a long stand. It is a good ache, a reminder that you are doing your work. You have learned to stand in such a way that your weight is evenly distributed, your knees slightly bent, your spine straight but not rigid. The posture has become second nature. You do not have to think about it. Your hands rest lightly on the spear shaft, and your breathing is deep and slow, matching the long, calm rhythm of the river. Time passes without you measuring it. The stars move almost imperceptibly across the sky, climbing higher or sinking lower depending on their position in the great circle. The lamp on the far bank still burns. The breeze has stopped again, and the world is perfectly still, as if holding its breath. You are aware of a great age in this landscape, the sense that the river has been flowing under these same stars for longer than any story can tell, long before the palace was built, long before the first stone was laid on the first temple. You are only one more watcher in a line that stretches back into the deep past and forward into a future you will never see. That thought does not make you feel small. It makes you feel placed, exactly where you should be, at exactly this moment. The darkness is now complete, a deep, soft black that wraps around you like a cloak. You can no longer see the steps leading down to the water, or the skiff, or the fallen palm frond. The platform is an island of stone in an ocean of night. Yet you do not feel lost. You know every inch of this post, the slight depression in the stone where a pot once sat, the crack in the parapet that runs diagonally for the length of your forearm. Your senses have adjusted, and you hear things you did not hear during the day, the distant gurgle of water entering a submerged channel, the soft splash of a frog jumping from a lily pad, the whisper of your own hair against your forehead when a breath of air stirs. You take the water jar from its niche in the parapet, a smooth clay vessel with a wide mouth, and drink. The water is cool and tastes of the river, filtered through sand and stored in the shade. You pour a little into your palm and wipe it over your face, feeling the refreshing coolness on your eyelids and cheeks. The small ritual wakes you up just enough to keep your attention sharp, then fades and you sink back into the quiet awareness of the watch. You replace the jar carefully, the clay making a soft clink against the stone, a sound so small it is swallowed immediately by the night. Now you notice that the insect chorus has changed. The steady trill has been joined by a lower rhythmic pulsing, a sound like a tiny drum being beaten very far away. It is a night beetle, you think, or perhaps a type of frog that calls only after full dark. The sound comes and goes in waves, swelling and receding without any pattern you can discern. It becomes part of the fabric of the night, another thread in the tapestry of quiet sounds that keep you company. You do not try to analyze it, you simply let it be, as you let everything else be. The moon has not yet risen, and you are grateful for the full darkness that makes the stars so bright. On nights when the moon is full, the river turns silver and the shadows are sharp, beautiful but different. Tonight is a night for stars, for the deep, velvety blackness that lets you see the faintest points of light, the ones that hide when the moon is out. You look up and let your eyes wander, not focusing on anything in particular, just drinking in the slow, silent fire of the heavens. The sight is so vast that it empties the mind, leaving only a quiet sense of wonder that is too deep for words. You become aware that the evening has fully ended. The watch has passed from its beginning phase into the long, steady middle. The palace is completely silent behind you, not even a dog stirring. The far bank lamp still glows. The river still flows. You are still here, standing, breathing, watching. There is a profound simplicity to the moment, a reduction of life to its most basic elements: body, stone, water, sky. You do not need anything else. The thought of your reed mat in the guard quarters, of the sleep that will come after the watch, is a distant and unimportant thing. Right now, here, you are exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you are supposed to do, and that is enough. You let out a long, slow breath, and your shoulders drop a little more. The tension you did not know you were holding melts away. The night stretches ahead, patient and unchanging, and you are ready to meet it, hour by hour, moment by moment, with the same patient stillness that the river has taught you. The first chapter of the watch is complete, and the next will be much like this one, a continuation of quiet presence under the ancient stars. The sky above you has shed its last color. The deep purple that lingered along the western edge has drained away completely, and what remains is a pure indigo that darkens toward the zenith. The stars, which earlier appeared one by one, now crowd the heavens in such numbers that you could never count them. You can see the great band of the Milky Way stretching from the southern horizon to the north, a river of soft light that seems to move if you stare at it too long, though you know the movement belongs to your own tired eyes. The constellations you have learned to recognize during countless nights are fixed in their places. There is the pattern like a plow, its handle curving gently toward the east. There is another like a stretched line of pearls, each star a bright bead on an invisible thread. And there, near the very center of the sky, is the group of 5 that you have always thought of as a hand reaching upward. No clouds disturb the view, and the air is so clear that the smallest stars, the ones that usually hide, are visible as a fine dust scattered across the blackness. You lift your chin and let the sight fill your vision, a silent and endless display that asks nothing of you but your attention. The river has transformed along with the sky. Where before it held the copper and rose of sunset, and later the deep pewter of early night, it has now become a great black mirror. The surface is so still that the stars are reflected with perfect clarity, each point of light doubled in the dark water, so that looking at the Nile is like looking into a second sky that lies just beneath the first. You cannot tell where the real stars end and the reflected ones begin. The horizon is lost in the darkness, and the river seems to flow with light rather than water. The current moves the reflected stars in a slow, steady procession downstream, a silent migration of light that never ends. You watch a single bright star near the top of the sky drift along its reflected path, traveling the length of your field of vision in the time it takes for several slow breaths, then disappearing around the bend. Another takes its place, and another, each one following the same silent course. The breeze that had been stirring the palm fronds dies away now, so gradually that you do not notice its absence until you realize the rustling has stopped. The air becomes perfectly still, holding its shape around you like an invisible cloak. With the stillness comes a new coolness, a distinct drop in temperature that you feel first on your bare arms and then on your face, a pleasant sharpness that makes the night feel clean and fresh. The linen of your kilt shifts against your legs without the wind, settling into folds that no longer move. The coolness carries a slight moisture from the river, a soft dampness that beads on the stone of the parapet and on the bronze tip of your spear. You breathe in, and the air tastes different now. The dry dust of the day is gone, replaced by the clean green scent of water and the faint mineral tang of the mudbank below. Each breath feels deeper than the last, as if the coolness opens something in your chest. The silence deepens along with the darkness. The palace behind you has been quiet for a long time, but now even the small sounds that remained have faded away. There is no voice, no footstep, no distant closing of a door. The village on the far bank offers no sound either. Its single lamp still burns, a steady yellow point, but the people who lit it are long asleep. In this complete silence, you begin to hear things that the daytime hides. There is the soft, rhythmic lap of water against the mudbank directly below your post, a sound so gentle that it is more like a whispered syllable repeated over and over, a quiet hush, then a pause, then another hush. The water touches the mud with a tenderness that seems almost deliberate, as if the river is breathing against the shore. You lean slightly over the parapet, and the sound becomes clearer, a slow metronome that marks the passing of time without any urgency. The mudbank receives each small wave with the same patient acceptance it has shown for thousands of years, absorbing the water, letting it drain back, waiting for the next. From somewhere among the reed beds to your left, a night insect begins its steady trill. The sound starts without warning, a high, thin vibration that cuts through the deep silence and then stops, leaving a hole that the silence quickly fills. After a few heartbeats, it begins again, sustains for a while longer, and then cuts off once more. The pattern is irregular, following no rhythm you can predict. Sometimes the trill lasts for a dozen seconds, sometimes only for a brief pulse before disappearing. You listen to it without trying to locate the source, letting the sound come and go like a thought that arrives and then departs. Below the trill, you catch a lower sound, a rhythmic pulsing that might be a frog or another insect, a deep thrum that you feel as much as hear, a vibration in the cool air that seems to rise from the water itself. The two sounds weave together and then separate, creating a texture of noise that is never quite the same from one moment to the next. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, a small movement that you make without thinking. The leather grip of your spear is still warm from your hand, holding the heat that it has absorbed over the evening, and the contrast between its warmth and the cool air is a small comfort. You wrap your fingers around it more firmly, feeling the familiar way the leather has worn smooth in some places and remained rough in others, shaped by the hands of guards before you. The wooden shaft rises straight and solid from your grip, and the bronze point above your head catches the starlight in a faint glimmer, a tiny cold flame at the very top of your peripheral vision. You do not lean on the spear, it is not a staff, but a tool, and you hold it with the quiet readiness that your training has made automatic. Your gaze moves slowly across the dark landscape, pausing at each familiar point. The palm trees on the far bank are invisible now, their silhouettes having merged completely with the sky, but you know exactly where they stand. The three that lean north, the gap between the second and third where the fisherman's path runs down to the water. The reed bed on your side of the river is a mass of deeper blackness against the already black water, a soft shape that rustles occasionally when a bird shifts in its sleep. The stone steps leading down to the landing are hidden, but you could walk down them blindfolded without missing a step. All these things are present in your mind as clearly as if you could see them, a map of the night built from memory and long familiarity. Downriver, where the current carries the water around a wide curve, a small light flickers. It is not the steady lamp of the village. This light is smaller, yellower, and it trembles as if moved by an unsteady hand or a faint breeze that does not reach you. You turn your head slightly to watch it, your eyes fixing on the distant point. The light seems to float just above the surface of the water, too far away to make out any details of the boat or person that carries it. Perhaps it is a lamp on a small fishing skiff, one of those that drifts at night with nets trailing, or a lantern hung from the pole of a solitary traveler making a late crossing. You cannot tell, and the distance swallows any sound that might accompany it. The light continues to flicker, growing a little brighter for a moment, then dimming, its movements slow and hypnotic. You watch it for a long stretch of time, your breathing steady, your body still. The light drifts very slightly to the left, then to the right, as if the boat is nudged by small eddies. Then, without any warning, it blinks out. The darkness where it was is complete, as if the light had never been there at all. You continue looking at that spot for a while longer, but nothing reappears. The river has taken the light into itself, and the night is once again unbroken. The darkness settles deeper after the light disappears, as if the small glow had been holding back the full weight of the night. Now the blackness seems to expand around you, not in any threatening way, but gently, like a tide rising so slowly that you do not notice it until it is already there. The air feels thicker, softer, wrapping around your shoulders and arms, and the silence takes on a quality of depth, as if you could fall into it and keep falling. You are aware of the vastness of the world around you, the river stretching miles to the north and south, the desert beyond the eastern hills, the fields and marshes spreading west, all of it lying under the same canopy of stars, all of it held in the same perfect stillness. You are a single point of consciousness in this immense landscape, and the thought is not lonely, but freeing, a release from the small concerns of the day. You feel the slow expansion of the night, unhurried and vast, as if time itself has stretched out and become elastic. Minutes no longer feel distinct, they flow into one another like the water below. You could not say how long you have been standing here, nor how long remains of your watch. The hours ahead seem to open up before you, a calm and empty road that you will travel step by step, breath by breath. There is no hurry. The river does not hurry. It has been flowing since before memory and will continue flowing long after, and its patience has seeped into the stones of the platform, into the bones of the palace, into the heart of the guard who stands here night after night. You are part of that patience now, a small human extension of the river's long, slow life. The insect trill stops and starts again, and the frog pulse continues its deep thrumming. The water laps against the mud bank with the same soft hush. The stars wheel overhead in their silent arcs, and the river carries their reflections downstream. You stand at your post, feeling the cool stone under your sandals, the warm leather in your hand, the cool air on your face. Your mind is quiet, emptied of any particular thought, filled only with the simple experience of being here. The darkness is not empty. It is full of small sounds and subtle sensations, a rich fabric, woven from the threads of the night. You let yourself be held by it, suspended in the slow current of time, watching the darkening waters that have already become the whole world. The deep stillness of the night has held the world for what feels like a long, unmeasured stretch, and you are settled into it so completely that the boundary between yourself and the darkness has grown thin. Your breathing is slow and even, your weight balanced on both feet, your gaze resting without focus on the black expanse of the Nile. The stars continue their silent turning overhead, and the river continues its silent flowing below, a perfect mirror of the heavens that moves without sound. The small sounds you noticed earlier have become so familiar that you no longer hear them as separate events. The lapping of water, the distant thrum of a frog, the occasional rustle of reeds, all these have merged into a continuous texture that lies beneath the silence, a quiet presence that requires no attention. You feel as though you could remain like this until dawn, without any change at all, held in a pocket of time that moves at a different speed from the waking world. Then, from far upstream, a new sound reaches you. It is so faint at first that you are not certain you have heard it, a soft plash that comes once and then, after a long pause, comes again. The rhythm is irregular but distinct, not part of the natural background. You lift your chin slightly and turn your head toward the direction of the sound, your attention sharpening without any urgency. The noise repeats after several seconds, a gentle splash followed by a brief silence, then another splash. It is the sound of a long pole being pushed into the riverbed and withdrawn, the familiar signature of a boat being poled upstream against the current. You have heard this sound many times before, and it always means the same thing. Someone is traveling on the water, making their slow way along the Nile in the darkness. You shift your position just enough to face upriver, your hands remaining on the spear shaft, your posture still relaxed. The sound grows gradually louder as the boat approaches, each dip and push of the pole reaching you with greater clarity. The splashes are unhurried, keeping a pace that suggests no urgency, a traveler who is content to move at the speed the river allows. Along with the splashing, you begin to hear the soft creak of wood, the sound of a hull flexing slightly as it moves through the water, and the low murmur of the current parting around the bow. These sounds combine into a quiet music of travel, and you listen to it as you might listen to a familiar song, letting it fill the silence without needing to analyze it. After a time, a point of light appears far upriver, just above the surface of the water. It is small and orange, trembling slightly as it moves, a single oil lamp hung from a short mast or a pole. The light is too distant to illuminate anything but itself. It does not reveal the shape of the boat or the person aboard, only the fact that something is there, something alive and purposeful in the vast darkness. You watch the light as it drifts closer, following the slow curve of the river. Its path is not perfectly straight. It sways a little to the left and then to the right, guided by the pilot's hand on the steering oar or the pole. The flame inside the lamp flickers now and then, dimming for a heartbeat before steadying again, and you imagine the wick drawing oil from the clay reservoir, the small adjustments made by the cool night air moving around it. As the light draws nearer, the shape of the boat begins to emerge from the darkness. It is a felucca, a small sailing craft with a single short mast and a high, curved prow that lifts above the water like the neck of a bird. The sail is furled and tied to the yard, indicating that the boat is being moved entirely by pole or oar, probably to avoid the noise of the wind or because the breeze is too light to fill the canvas. The hull sits low in the water, its wooden planks dark with age and moisture, reflecting the lamp's glow in a dull sheen along one side. The boat moves slowly, deliberately, each push of the pole sending it forward by a few arms' lengths, then allowing it to glide for a moment before the next push. The rhythm of the sound is hypnotic: splash, glide, splash, glide, splash, a cadence that merges with your own breathing. The felucca passes directly before your post now, so close that you could call out if you wished, but you do not call out, and the figure standing at the stern does not call to you. The traveller is wrapped in a dark cloak that covers the body from shoulders to feet, and the hood is drawn up over the head, leaving the face in shadow. You cannot tell if it is a man or a woman, young or old. All you can see is a still silhouette against the faint glow of the lamp, a human shape that stands with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the river well. One hand holds the long pole, its lower end disappearing into the black water, while the other rests on the steering oar, making small adjustments that keep the boat in the deeper channel. The posture is relaxed, the weight shifted onto one leg, as if this night journey is nothing out of the ordinary, just another crossing or delivery or visit undertaken in the cool hours when the day's heat has faded. The lamp on the felucca casts a small circle of orange light onto the water around the hull. Within that circle, you can see the surface of the river up close, the gentle ripples caused by the boat's passage, the tiny whirlpools that spin off from the pole each time it is withdrawn, the way the light breaks into fragments and reforms, a shifting mosaic of gold and black. The circle moves with the boat, a travelling island of visibility in the vast dark, and you watch it slide across the river like a slow comet. Inside the boat, you catch a glimpse of a few shapes, a coil of rope lying on the deck, a water jar similar to your own, and perhaps a basket or a bundle covered with a cloth. These details pass quickly, leaving only an impression of a simple, self-contained world moving through the night. No greetings exchanged between you and the traveller. There is no need for one. This is not a meeting that requires words. You are a guard standing on a stone platform, and they are a traveller passing on the river, and both of you have your own silent watches to keep. The felucca continues on its course, and you simply watch it go, your eyes following the orange lamp as it moves downstream. The sound of the pole grows softer, the splashes becoming fainter as the distance increases, and the creak of the wood fades into the general murmur of the night. The boat follows the bend of the river, its light beginning to curve away from you, and you turn your head to keep it in view for as long as possible. The lamp becomes a smaller point, then a dot, then a glimmer that could be mistaken for a low star near the horizon. At last it vanishes around the far curve, hidden by the dark mass of the palm trees on the eastern bank, and the night closes over it as if it had never been there. The sound of the pole is the last thing to go. For a while after the light has disappeared, you can still hear the faint splashes, each one more distant than the last, until they are so soft that you cannot be sure whether you are hearing the actual sound or only remembering it. Then even that ghost of a sound fades, and the river is empty once more, its surface holding only the reflections of the stars. The silence that returns feels different from the silence before the boat arrived. It is deeper, more complete, as if the passing of the felucca has reminded you just how quiet the night can be. You stand in this renewed quiet, your spear still in your hand, your eyes still on the dark curve of the water where the boat disappeared, and you feel the calmness of the river settle over you again. You return your gaze to the near bank, where the reed beds show as a dark, textured band against the black water. A family of ducks rustles among the stems, their soft quacks, and the whisper of feathers telling you that they have been disturbed by something, perhaps a fish moving in the shallows, or a water rat swimming past. The rustling continues for a moment, then quiets as the birds resettle into their sleeping positions, their heads tucked under their wings, their bodies becoming invisible among the reeds. The small disturbance passes, and the bank is still once more. You look down at the water directly below your post, where the stone steps descend into the darkness. The river here is so dark that you can see nothing but the faintest glint of starlight on the surface, a few scattered points of light that shift with the current. The skiff that was tied to the post earlier is still there, a dark shape that moves slightly with each lap of water, tugging gently at its rope. The rope creaks a little, a soft, rhythmic sound that you have not noticed before, and you listen to it for a while, a tiny voice in the great quiet. The fallen palm frond that was floating beside the skiff has drifted away, carried downstream by the current, and you wonder idly where it will end up, caught in the reeds of the next bend, or carried all the way to the delta where the river meets the sea. The thought is mild and passing, and you let it go without following it. The night air remains cool and still, holding the scent of the river and the distant desert. You breathe in slowly, feeling the freshness fill your lungs, and then exhale just as slowly, watching the faint mist of your breath appear for a moment before vanishing. The temperature has dropped enough that you can now feel the coolness on your ankles and the back of your neck, a gentle reminder that the hours are moving forward. You adjust the linen strap that crosses your shoulder, making sure the fabric lies flat, and then return your hand to the spear. The bronze point above your head still captures the starlight, a tiny pinprick of cold light that marks your position against the dark palace wall behind you. Your thoughts drift back to the felucca, now long gone. You picture it continuing its slow progress downstream, the traveler still poling steadily through the night, passing other villages, other guard posts, other palm groves dark against the sky. Perhaps by dawn the boat will reach a landing where someone is waiting, or perhaps it will tie up at a sandbar, and the traveler will sleep through the heat of the day before continuing the next night. You do not know the destination, and you do not need to know. The image of the lamp moving away into the darkness is enough, a small story that unfolded and closed without requiring your involvement. The river holds many such stories, countless journeys taken in the quiet hours, and you are only a witness to a few of them. You lift your eyes to the stars again, tracing the familiar patterns. The hand reaching upward has shifted slightly to the west, following its slow nightly arc. The stretched line of pearls has climbed higher, and the plough has begun its descent toward the horizon. The movements are so gradual that you cannot perceive them directly, but you know them by the positions they occupy now compared to when your watch began. This slow dance is the oldest clock, marking the hours without a sound, and you have learned to read it as clearly as you would read a sundial during the day. The knowledge brings a quiet satisfaction, a sense of being connected to something vast and orderly that does not change. You notice that the insect chorus has shifted its tone again. The trilling that was high and thin earlier has been joined by a new sound, a series of soft clicks that seem to answer each other from different parts of the reed bed. One click comes from your left, then a pause, then a click from further away, then another pause, and then a click from the left again. The pattern is like a conversation in a language you cannot understand, and you listen to it with a mild curiosity that does not demand explanation. The clicking continues for a while, then fades, leaving only the steady pulse of the frog and the soft lapping of the water. Your body feels heavy now in a comfortable way, the weight of the long stand settling into your muscles. You know from experience that this feeling will pass, that after a certain point the body finds a second rhythm and the tiredness recedes into the background. You are not yet at that point, but you are approaching it, moving deeper into the watch as the night moves deeper into itself. You shift your weight again, bending your knees slightly, and then straightening, and the small movement refreshes you enough to bring your attention back to the present moment. The stone under your sandals is cool and solid, a constant foundation that holds you steady. The river looks empty now, a broad, dark road that stretches without interruption from one horizon to the other. It carries nothing but the reflections of the stars and the slow, silent current that has been its burden and its gift for all of time. The emptiness is not a lack, it is a fullness of stillness, a space that holds everything without needing to name it. You stand at the edge of this space, a quiet guardian, and let the emptiness fill you with its peace. The felucca has come and gone, leaving no trace but the memory of a small orange light and a soft splashing sound, and the river has closed over that memory like water closing over a stone. The night continues, and so do you, watching, breathing, waiting for nothing in particular, because there is nothing to wait for except the slow turn of the stars and the eventual approach of dawn. Footsteps approach behind you, regular and unhurried, and you recognize the pattern before you turn. It is the other guard, the one who always takes the middle watch, a man whose name you have spoken 1,000 times in the quiet exchange of duties. His sandals make a soft, even scuff on the stone path, the sound growing from a distant rhythm to a near presence, and you do not startle because you have been expecting him. The night has reached its midpoint, a fact you know not from any timekeeping device, but from the position of the stars and the deep quality of the silence. The Plough constellation has completed half its descent toward the western horizon, and the stretched line of pearls stands directly overhead, confirming what your body already feels. The watch is half dumb. You turn slowly, shifting your spear to your left hand, and see the guard emerge from the shadow of the palace wall. He carries a spear like yours, its bronze point catching the starlight in a brief glint, and his linen kilt is pale against the darkness. He raises one hand in a small economical gesture of greeting, and you return the gesture with the same restraint, a silent acknowledgement that needs no elaboration. He steps onto the platform and stands beside you, looking out over the river for a moment before speaking. His breathing is even from the short walk, and his posture is relaxed as it always is at this hour. You speak a few low words about the condition of the night, the river quiet, no boats of note except a small felucca that passed earlier with a single lamp and disappeared downstream, the sky clear with no sign of wind or storm. You mention the slight drop in temperature, the way the mist has not yet risen from the water, the stillness of the reeds. He listens without interruption, nodding once or twice, his eyes scanning the dark surface as you speak. Then he replies in a voice that matches your own, low and unhurried, telling you that the palace remains asleep, that the granary guard reported nothing unusual, that the temple enclosure is quiet and the ox has settled. The exchange is brief and practical, a transfer of awareness from one watcher to another, and it follows the same form it has always followed, the same words slightly rearranged but never different in their essence. There is a comfort in this repetition, a sense of order being maintained through small rituals. When the exchange is complete, he takes your place at the parapet, resting his spear against the stone with a soft clink. You step aside, giving him the full view of the river, and for a moment you both stand in silence, looking out at the black water together. The stars continue their slow turning, the current continues its steady flow, and nothing in the world has changed except the identity of the watcher. You feel a quiet satisfaction in this seamless transition, a proof that the watch is larger than any individual guard, that it will continue through the night and into the next day and the next, an unbroken chain of attention. You do not say this because it does not need saying. It is understood in the simple act of handing over the post. You pick up your spear, nod once more, and turn away. You walk a short distance back toward the palace, not to the guard quarters but to a second post nearer the water stair. This is the other half of your duty on nights when the roster splits the watch, and the path leads you along the base of a high wall where the stones are cool and rough under your trailing hand. The darkness here is deeper, sheltered from the starlight by the overhanging architecture, and you move with the confidence of long familiarity, your feet finding the smooth stones without stumbling. The sound of your footsteps is absorbed by the thick walls, and you pass through a narrow archway into a different kind of space. Here the river opens before you again, but the view is changed. Two thick pillars of stone frame the water, part of the old palace terrace that descends in broad steps to a small landing where boats can tie up. The pillars are massive, their surfaces carved with shallow reliefs worn smooth by ages of flood and wind, and they rise from the stone platform like two ancient sentinels. You take your position between them, where a low parapet offers a clear view of the Nile, and you set your spear against the right-hand pillar, its shaft fitting into a groove that many spears have worn over the years. From this post, the river presents a different face. The view is narrower, framed by the pillars like a doorway into the night, and the water seems closer, the sound of the lapping against the steps more distinct. The landing below you is visible in its upper portion, where the stone steps descend into darkness, and you can make out the faint glint of water washing over the lowest visible step. The rest of the steps vanish into the black surface, and the skiff that was tied at the other post is not here. This landing is empty, its mooring post bare. The far bank is visible only as a dark line between the pillars, and the palm trees that earlier stood out as silhouettes are now indistinguishable from the sky. The river within this frame is a rectangle of black glass, holding its own set of reflected stars, a concentrated version of the vastness you watched from the previous post. You settle into this new position, leaning your spear against the pillar as you take in the altered perspective. The stone is cool against your shoulder, and the pillar provides a sense of shelter, a solid presence at your back. You look up and notice that the moon has risen while you were changing posts. It is a thin crescent, just above the western horizon, its curve as delicate as a shaving of silver. The moon is low enough that its light is gentle, not the harsh silver of a full moon, but a soft, diffuse glow that barely competes with the stars. It hangs above the dark mass of the western desert, its lower tip nearly touching the horizon, and it will set soon, leaving the sky to the stars alone. You are grateful for its brief appearance. There is something calming about a crescent moon, a quiet presence that does not demand attention but rewards it. The moonlight catches the surface of the river in a single thin line of silver that stretches from the far bank to the foot of the landing below you. The line is narrow and wavering, a path of light that trembles with the movement of the water, and it seems to connect your post to the unseen far shore like a thread laid across the darkness. You let your eyes follow the silver path as it widens and narrows, its edges blurring and sharpening with the slow pulse of the current. The light is not steady. It shimmers, breaking into fragments and then reforming, a phenomenon you have observed many times and never tire of. The crescent moon above and the silver line below form a pairing, a celestial geometry that changes every night but always adheres to the same underlying order. You stand within this order, a silent participant, and let the quiet beauty of it settle over you. Behind you, the palace sleeps in a depth of silence that feels different from the earlier part of the night. At the first post, you could still sense the nearness of the living quarters, the stored warmth of the kitchens, the faint scent of incense from the household shrine. Here, near the water stair, the palace feels more distant, its presence reduced to the massive stone pillars and the high wall at your back. The silence is thicker, broken only by the natural sounds of the river, the soft wash of water against the steps, the occasional plop of a fish, the distant call of a night bird that you have not heard before. The bird's call is a single, low note, repeated 3 times with long pauses between, a melancholy sound that seems to come from the reed beds far to the south. You listen to it until it stops, and then the silence returns, deeper, for having been interrupted. You adjust your position, shifting your weight onto your back foot and crossing your arms loosely over your chest. The spear remains against the pillar, within easy reach, but you do not feel the need to hold it constantly. This post is more enclosed than the main platform, and the sense of vulnerability is less. The pillars create a natural boundary that allows you to relax without diminishing your alertness. You have learned over many nights that true watchfulness does not require tension. It is a state of calm receptivity, an openness to any change in the expected pattern. The night so far has presented no changes, only the slow procession of natural events, and you have no reason to think the remaining hours will be different. Your mind is quiet, your breathing deep and regular, and you allow yourself to simply be here, observing the silver line on the water and the crescent moon sinking toward the desert. The moon continues its slow descent, its lower curve now touching the dark line of the horizon. The crescent seems to flatten slightly, an optical illusion created by the atmosphere, and its color warms from silver to a pale amber as the light passes through the thicker air near the earth. The silver line on the river dims in response, its edges growing less distinct, And then, as the moon's lower tip slips below the horizon, the line begins to fade from the far end first. The light withdraws across the water like a receding tide, pulling back toward your shore, and you watch the path of silver shrink until it is only a small patch of shimmer near the landing. Then the last sliver of the moon vanishes, and the silver patch goes dark, leaving the river entirely to the stars. The whole process has taken only a few minutes, a slow, graceful exit that you feel privileged to have witnessed. The night seems darker now, the stars brighter by contrast, and your eyes adjust quickly to the return of full starlight. You look up at the sky, now free of the moon's gentle competition, and the stars present themselves with renewed brilliance. The Milky Way arches overhead, a broad river of light that mirrors the dark one below, and you think again of the two rivers flowing in parallel, one of water and one of stars. The constellations have shifted further since you last noted them. The hand reaching upward has moved well to the west, and the plough is now partly obscured by the palace wall. A new pattern, one you think of as the great bird with outstretched wings, has risen in the east, its stars faint but recognizable. You name these patterns silently, not with words but with the recognition of shapes, a quiet game you play with yourself on the long watches. The stars offer an endless variety within their fixed order, and you never tire of tracing their arrangements. The air temperature has stabilized now, no longer dropping, and a gentle coolness wraps the world in a steady embrace. You feel it on your bare arms and legs, on the back of your neck, on the tips of your fingers where they rest against the stone pillar. The linen of your kilt has absorbed the coolness and feels crisp to the touch. You breathe in, and the air carries the scent of the river with a slight new note, a faint perfume of night-blooming flowers from the palace garden, carried by some invisible current of air that has shifted in the stillness. The scent comes and goes, so subtle that you are not always sure you smell it, and its presence adds a layer of softness to the otherwise austere night. The lapping of the water against the steps below continues its steady rhythm, a sound so constant that it has become a kind of silence in itself. Each small wave washes over the lowest stone. A brief hiss, then recedes, a brief silence, and the pattern repeats without variation. You count the waves for a while, not deliberately, but as a background rhythm that your mind tracks without effort. After 100 or so, you lose count and simply let the sound be what it is, a heartbeat of the river that has been there since the first stone was laid and will be there long after the last. The thought is not melancholic, it is simply true, and you accept it as you accept the coolness of the stone and the brightness of the stars. The night feels exactly at its midpoint now, balanced and deep, with the hours before and after midnight symmetrical in their darkness. You have reached the still point of the watch, the place where time seems to pause and gather itself before beginning the slow descent toward dawn. Your body knows this point. The tiredness you felt earlier has passed, replaced by a second alertness that is softer than the first, more dreamlike, as if you are watching the world from a slight distance. Your thoughts drift without urgency, touching on small things, the grain of the stone under your fingers, the way the water darkens where the steps descend, the memory of the felucca's orange lamp disappearing around the bend. None of these thoughts linger. They pass through your mind like the small waves passing over the stone, arriving and departing with equal gentleness. You shift your position slightly, uncrossing your arms and letting them rest at your sides. The movement is slow and deliberate, a physical punctuation in the long sentence of the night. Your spear stands ready beside you, its bronze tip a familiar shape in the darkness, and you touch the smooth wood of its shaft briefly, a reassurance of solidity. The pillar at your back is massive and ancient, its carvings hidden by the dark but present in your memory, scenes of offering and navigation that you have traced with your fingers during daylight hours. Now they are only textures, shallow grooves that hold the coolness of the stone, and you lean against them without thought, feeling the weight of the palace behind you and the openness of the river before you. A soft breeze stirs for the first time in hours, just enough to move the loose edge of your kilt and ripple the surface of the water near the landing. The reflected stars shiver, that points elongating and then reforming, and the silver line that is no longer there would have danced if the moon had not set. The breeze carries a dry, dusty scent from the desert beyond the eastern hills, a reminder of the vast arid spaces that lie just out of sight, and it mixes with the river's moisture to create a fragrance that is both clean and ancient. The palm fronds overhead, invisible but present, rustle softly, a sound like distant rain that lasts only a few seconds before the breeze dies and the stillness returns. You turn your gaze back to the river between the pillars, where the dark water flows without end. The stars reflected on its surface move steadily downstream, tiny points of light that are born and die in the same moment, replaced by others, a continuous procession that never repeats exactly. You watch this procession for a long stretch, your breathing slow and even, your mind as calm as the water is deep. The midnight change is complete, the watch has been handed over, and you are now the guardian of this smaller, more intimate section of the Nile, a sentinel between two ancient pillars, alone but not lonely. The hours ahead stretch out with the same patient rhythm, and you are ready to meet them, one quiet moment at a time. During the deepest part of the night, the world shrinks to what you can hear and feel, your other senses receding into irrelevance as the darkness presses close. The stars still shine overhead, but you have stopped looking at them. Your gaze rests instead on the near darkness just beyond the platform, where the water meets the stone and the reeds begin their tangled growth. The moon has long since set, leaving not even a sliver of silver on the river, and the blackness is so complete that you could imagine yourself suspended in a void, a single point of awareness floating between the water below and the sky above. Yet the sounds anchor you to the world, a rich tapestry of small noises that the daytime smothers but the deep night amplifies, and you let your attention drift among them like a boat on a slow current. The croaking of frogs begins in earnest, a low pulsing chorus that rises from the reed beds to your left. It is not a sudden onset, but a gradual swelling, as if the frogs have been testing the silence all evening and have only now decided to commit to their song. The sound is deep and rhythmic, a series of short, hollow notes that overlap and interweave, creating a texture that is both rough and soothing. Each pulse lasts perhaps a heartbeat, a soft thrum that seems to come from the mud itself, and the chorus fades after a minute, leaving a resonant silence before starting again, rising like a tide that advances and retreats with the patience of the living world. You have heard this chorus many nights before. It always begins around this same hour, the deepest hour when even the insects pause and the river holds its breath. The pattern is familiar, a cycle of sound and silence that you stop noticing after a while unless you deliberately listen. But tonight you do listen, letting the frog song fill your ears and then empty out again, a slow respiration of the marsh. Beneath that sound, when the chorus recedes, you catch a steady trickle of water passing through a narrow channel in the mudbank just below your post. It is a delicate noise, a thin, liquid thread of sound that winds through the deeper notes of the frogs, persistent and unchanging. The trickle comes from a place where the river seeps through a gap in the reeds, spilling into a small backwater that overflows into a lower pool, and the water moves with a gentle urgency, a miniature waterfall only a hand's width across. You have noticed this sound many times before, always at the same hour, because the seep runs strongest when the river is at its nightly low, the water level dropping enough to expose the narrow channel. The trickle is so faint that you must hold your breath to hear it clearly, but once you find it, it becomes a constant companion, a thin silver line of sound running beneath the broader noises of the night. You listen to it now with a mild curiosity, tracing its imagined path down the mud bank, through the reeds, and into the dark pool where water beetles skate on the surface and small fish hide among the roots. A slight breeze stirs the palm fronds above you, making a dry rustle that comes and goes. The sound is papery and thin, like old scrolls being unrolled, and it lasts only a few seconds before the breeze dies and the fronds fall silent again. The wind is too light to reach your face. You feel it only as a faint movement of air high above, a cool breath that brushes the tops of the trees and then withdraws. The rustle pauses, then returns a minute later, following some pattern of air currents that you cannot predict, a slow conversation between the night and the palms. Between these rustles, the fronds are perfectly still, their dark shapes merging with the black sky, and you know them only by their sound, a signature that marks the presence of the trees, even when you cannot see them. The breeze carries a brief scent of dry dust from the palm grove, a warm, earthy smell that contrasts with the cool moisture rising from the river, and the combination creates a layered fragrance, the desert and the water meeting in the air around you. Far away, so faint it might be imagined, a dog barks once and falls silent. The sound comes from the direction of the village on the far bank, a single short note that hangs in the air and then dissolves. No other barks answer it. Whatever woke the dog has passed, and the animal has settled back into sleep. You strain your ears for a moment, listening for a repeat, but the silence that follows is complete, and you are left with the impression that the bark might have been a trick of your tired mind, a phantom noise conjured from the deep quiet. Yet you know the village dogs, and they do sometimes bark at this hour, stirred by a jackal passing through the fields or a night bird calling too close to the rooftops. The sound is a reminder that even in the deepest night, life continues across the river, families sleeping on their reed mats, animals moving through the dark, the whole hidden world turning slowly toward dawn. You adjust the linen strap across your shoulder, pulling it back into place where it has slipped during the long stillness. The fabric is slightly damp from the night air, and it lies cool against your skin as you settle it. You roll your neck slowly to one side, then the other, feeling the pleasant ache of stillness release in a soft crackle of vertebrae. The movement is small but satisfying, a reminder that your body is still awake, still holding its post, still part of the watch. You flex your fingers around the spear shaft, then relax them, letting the wood rest loosely in your grip. The spear has been your companion for so many nights that it feels like an extension of your arm. Its weight and balance are as familiar as your own breathing, and you no longer think about holding it. You simply do, as naturally as you stand or see or hear. You turn your attention now to the great river itself, which makes almost no noise beyond the gentle push of the current against its banks. This sound is so constant that you stopped hearing it hours ago, your mind having classified it as silence, but now you deliberately listen, and it returns to your awareness, a soft whisper that has been there all along. The current speaks in a low, continuous murmur, not a voice but a presence, a deep hum that underlies every other sound of the night. It is the sound of the Nile breathing, a slow exhalation that has never stopped since the river first found its course through the valley. You lean slightly toward the parapet, and the murmur grows clearer, a liquid rustle that seems to come from everywhere at once. The water does not splash or gurgle. It simply moves, a massive, silent force that expresses itself only in this faint edge sound where it meets the land. You let the whisper fill your ears, a calming drone that erases thought and leaves only a quiet attentiveness. Below the current's whisper, you can hear, if you concentrate, the tiny popping sounds of air bubbles rising from the mud. The riverbed is alive with slow decay, old reeds and fallen palm fronds releasing their stored gases in minute bursts that rise through the water and break the surface with a sound too small to be called a plop. These pops come at irregular intervals, a single bubble here, two quick ones there, and then a long pause before another. They are like a secret code that the river speaks to itself, a language of decomposition and renewal that you have learned to recognize but never to translate. You listen to the bubbles for a while, and the randomness of their rhythm becomes a pattern of its own, a proof that the river is not dead, but deeply, quietly alive. From somewhere out on the water, a fish jumps. The splash is sudden and clean, a sharp break in the low murmur, and you hear the ripples spreading outward, a faint, rapid lapping that fades quickly into the general wash. You picture the fish, a silver flash in the starlight, arcing out of the water and then disappearing, leaving only the circles that spread and smooth away. The splash is a punctuation mark in the long sentence of the night, a brief reminder of the life that teems below the surface, unseen and unconcerned with the watchful human on the platform. The river holds more life than the land, you think, a whole hidden world of scales and fins and drifting eggs, and you are only a visitor at its edge, a temporary observer who will never know its full depth. The insect chorus which had lulled earlier now resumes with a different voice. A single cricket close by begins a steady chirp, a high, repetitive note that cuts through the deeper sounds like a thin wire. The chirp is so regular that you could time your breathing to it, a rapid pulse that continues without pause for many minutes. Other crickets join in, one from the reed bed, another from the base of the pillar, and soon there is a network of chirps that weave around each other, a bright clicking tapestry that fills the near darkness. You close your eyes for a moment and the sound seems to surround you, a fence of tiny noises that marks the boundary between your platform and the wild world beyond. Then you open your eyes again, and the darkness is unchanged, the stars still fixed, the river still flowing, and the crickets still chirping their tireless song. The coolness of the night has settled into your bones now, not unpleasantly but noticeably, and you are aware of the weight of your own body in a way that the heat of the day never allows. Your arms feel heavy, your legs solid, your feet planted firmly on the stone. You are a column of warmth in the vast coolness, a small living fire that the night wraps around but cannot extinguish. You breathe deeply, and the cool air fills your lungs, refreshing and clean. You exhale, and a faint mist appears for a heartbeat before vanishing. The mist is a new development. The air must be colder than you realized, or the river must be warmer. The two temperatures meeting in your breath. You watch for the next exhalation, and there it is again, a tiny ghost that comes and goes, a sign of the hidden moisture that saturates the night air. You become aware of a new sound, or perhaps a sound that has been there all along, and you are only now perceiving it. It is a very low hum, so deep that you feel it in your chest rather than hear it in your ears, a vibration that seems to come from the earth itself. At first you cannot identify it, but then you recognize it as the distant resonance of the temple enclosure, where the priests may be chanting a late-night prayer, or a solitary musician may be blowing into a long horn. The sound is too far away to make out any melody or rhythm. It is only a presence, a slow wave that rises and falls with the patience of ritual. You have heard this hum on other nights, always around this same deep hour, and it has never disturbed you. It is a human sound, a reminder that others are also awake, also keeping vigil in their own way, and the thought brings a quiet sense of connection. The hum continues for a while, then fades, leaving only the natural chorus of the river and the frogs and the crickets. You stretch your arms slowly above your head, feeling the pull in your shoulders and the long muscles of your back. The stretch is luxurious, a slow unwinding of the tension that has crept in during the stillness, and you hold it for a moment before lowering your arms. Your joints creak softly, and you roll your wrists, then your ankles, small circles that keep the blood moving. The stone under your sandals is cold now, really cold, and you can feel the chill through the leather soles. You shift your weight again, and the slight change of position brings a new alertness, a brief refreshment that carries you forward into the next stretch of the watch. The frogs have fallen silent again, their cycle reaching its low point, and the sudden absence of their chorus makes the other sounds stand out sharply. The trickle in the mud channel seems louder now, a steady, liquid note that runs beneath the cricket chirps. The current's whisper along the bank seems more distinct, a soft shushing that never stops. And far off, beyond the eastern desert, you think you hear a new sound, a very distant, very faint rumble that might be thunder or might be nothing at all. The sky is clear, so thunder is unlikely. Perhaps it is a rockfall in the hills, or the movement of sand, or simply the earth settling. The rumble does not repeat, and after a while you stop listening for it, returning your attention to the near sounds, the ones that you can trust and measure. You think of the hours that have passed since you began your watch, and of the hours that remain. The night has moved past its deepest point and is beginning, almost imperceptibly, to shift toward morning. You know this not from any visible sign, but from a subtle change in the quality of the darkness, a slight thinning at the eastern edge that your eyes cannot yet confirm, but your instinct feels. The stars have moved further along their arcs, and the constellations that were high when the watch began are now sliding toward the western horizon. The hand reaching upward is nearly gone, only its fingertips visible above the palace wall, and the plough is completely hidden. New stars have risen in the east, faint and anonymous, the vanguard of the dawn. You are not eager for the night to end. It is a good night, a quiet night, the kind of night that makes the watch feel less a duty and more a gift. But you accept that it will end, as all nights do, and that you will be there to see the first light touch the river. For now, though, you remain in the deep night, surrounded by its sounds and its stillness. The frogs begin their chorus again, a low rumble that swells from the reeds, and the crickets continue their tireless chirping. The trickle of water through the mud channel runs on, a thin, constant thread. The breeze returns briefly, rustling the palm fronds in a dry whisper, then fades. The dog does not bark again. The river flows and you stand and the world holds its breath, balanced on the edge between midnight and morning. You feel the weight of the spear in your hand, the cold stone under your feet, the cool air on your face, and you let these sensations be enough. There is nothing else you need, nothing else you want. The deep night is complete, and so are you. The quantity of the darkness begins to change so subtly that at first you cannot say what is different, only that something has shifted in the air or the sky or the texture of the silence. The deep blackness that held the world for so long is no longer absolute, and when you lift your eyes from the near water to the eastern horizon, you notice that the stars there have lost some of their sharpness. They are still present, still shining, but their edges are softer now, as if a thin veil has been drawn across them. The change is so gradual that you might be imagining it, but you have seen this before on other nights and you know what it means. The long reign of full darkness is beginning to end. The cool hour before dawn has arrived without announcement, slipping into the night like a quiet guest who does not knock. You straighten your posture slightly, your spine lengthening as you roll your shoulders back. The tiredness that had settled into your bones during the deepest part of the night lifts a little, replaced by a quiet alertness that comes not from any urgency, but from the body's own knowledge of the approaching day. The spear remains against the pillar where you left it, and you touch the shaft briefly, feeling the cool, smooth wood under your fingertips. The stone platform beneath your sandals is cold now, truly cold, having surrendered all its stored warmth to the night, and you feel the chill through the leather soles, a sensation that keeps you tethered to the present moment. The everyday Hift insulation tricks some of the degree, just enough to make you fold your arms across your chest, tucking your hands into the crooks of your elbows. The linen of your kilt feels thin against your legs, and the faience beads of your collar are cool against your collarbone, little discs of chill that move with your breathing. You look again toward the east, where the horizon is a clean dark line separating the black land from the black sky. At first the line is sharp, but as you watch it softens, the black of the sky lightening almost imperceptibly into a deep charcoal that holds no color yet, only a faint grayness that is more a feeling than a sight. The stars in that part of the sky are definitely dimmer now. They have not disappeared, but they have withdrawn, their light thinning as if they are stepping back to make room for something else. The brightest stars overhead still shine with their full strength, but the ones near the horizon are fading one by one, a slow retreat that you can track if you fix your attention on a single point. You choose a small, faint star just above the eastern hills and watch it. For a long moment it holds steady, and then, between one breath and the next, it is gone, swallowed by the brightening veil. You exhale slowly, and the faint mist of your breath appears and vanishes, a tiny ghost against the charcoal sky. The river has changed along with the sky, though its transformation is even slower. The black mirror of the night hours has given way to a surface that holds a deep, polished obsidian sheen, still dark, but now with a hint of depth rather than flatness. The reflected stars are fewer than before, and those that remain are faint, their points elongated by the invisible currents of air that move just above the water. You can no longer see the Milky Way reflected on the surface. It has merged into the general darkness, leaving only the brightest points to mark the river's connection to the sky. The water itself seems thicker somehow, heavier, as if the cold has made it dense and slow. The current continues its steady flow, but the surface is glassier, less disturbed, and the lapping against the steps below is softer, a muffled wash rather than a clear splash. You lean slightly toward the parapet to listen, and the sound is there, a gentle, rhythmic breathing that has not stopped all night, but has grown quieter as the hour deepens. You notice now that the frogs have fallen silent, as they always do in this hour. Their chorus, which rose and fell through the deep night like a tide of sound, has ceased completely, and the reed beds are empty of their thrumming. The absence of their noise leaves a gap in the night that the other sounds do not immediately fill. The crickets, too, have stopped their chirping, and the trickle of water through the mud channel seems to have slowed, as if the seep itself is resting before the day. The silence that follows is the deepest you have heard all night, a profound quiet that seems to press against your eardrums with a gentle weight. It is not an empty silence, but a waiting one, a held breath that the whole world is sharing. You feel yourself become very still within it, your own breathing shallow and slow, as if you do not want to disturb the moment. The world seems to hold its breath with you. The palm fronds above are motionless, not even the lightest breeze stirring them. The reeds below are rigid, their stalks frozen in the positions they held when the last gust died. The river flows without a murmur, its whisper having faded to something below hearing. Even the distant village is utterly silent. No dog barks, no rooster crows, no lamp flickers. The single point of light that you watched earlier from the far bank has gone out, its oil exhausted or its wick snuffed, and the eastern shore is a solid band of darkness indistinguishable from the water. You are suspended in a pocket of absolute stillness, the kind of stillness that feels ancient and rare, a gift that the night gives only in this 1 hour before the first hint of dawn. A thin mist begins to gather just above the surface of the river, rising in slow curls that drift like breath on a cold morning. It starts as a faint haze that you see only when you look for it, a subtle blurring of the line where the water meets the air. Then it thickens by degrees, separating into individual tendrils that rise, twist, and dissolve, reforming a moment later in a slow, hypnotic dance. The mist is white against the dark water, a pale, ghostly presence that seems to glow with its own faint light. It moves without wind, driven only by the temperature difference between the river and the air, and its movement is so gradual that you cannot see it happening, only notice after a moment that the pattern has changed. One tendril curls upward like a finger, then flattens and spreads, becoming a thin sheet that hangs just above the surface. Another rises near the landing steps, coils around the mooring post, and then dissipates into the darkness. The mist muffles the already soft sounds of the river, absorbing the lap of the water and the drip of the seep, wrapping the world in a blanket of silence. You watch the mist for a long time, your eyes following its slow evolution. The phenomenon is familiar, but never the same twice. Each pre-dawn mist shapes itself according to the exact conditions of the night, the humidity and the temperature and the flow of the current, all combining to create a unique display. Tonight the mist is thin and widespread, covering the entire surface of the river from bank to bank, and it rises only a few handspans above the water before fading. It gives the Nile a soft, ethereal quality, as if the river has become a bed of cloud that stretches into the darkness on either side. The far bank is now completely hidden, lost in the mist and the lingering darkness, and the pillars that frame your view seem to rise from a sea of pale vapor. You have the fleeting sensation that the platform is floating, disconnected from the land, adrift on a river of cloud. The sensation is not alarming, it is strangely peaceful, a gentle detachment from the solid world that will soon return with the daylight. The palm trees on the far bank emerge as soft grey shapes, against a sky that is no longer fully dark. You cannot pinpoint the moment they became visible. One moment the eastern horizon was a uniform blackness, and the next, the silhouettes of the palms were there, faint but definite, their fronds distinguishable as individual forms. The sky behind them has lightened to a deep slate grey, a colour that holds no warmth yet, but has lost all trace of the night's black. The stars in that part of the sky are gone now, all of them, and the ones overhead are dimming rapidly, their brightness fading as the sky dilutes with the approaching day. You look up and find the hand reaching upward. It is still there, but its stars are pale, mere suggestions of light that will vanish within the hour. The plough is long gone, and the stretched line of pearls has migrated far to the west, where the sky remains dark, the last stronghold of the retreating night. You feel a quiet pang at the loss of the stars, a small sadness that the perfect darkness is ending, but it passes quickly, replaced by a calm acceptance. The stars have done their work, now it is time for the sun. The cold intensifies slightly as the mist rises, the damp air settling on your skin and clothing in a fine, invisible layer. You feel it beating on your forearms, tiny droplets that merge and run in slow trails when you move. The linen of your kilt is damp now, clinging to your thighs, and the leather of your sandals is soft with absorbed moisture. Your face is cool, your cheeks and forehead chilled, and the tip of your nose feels numb in a way that is not unpleasant, just a reminder that your body is a warm thing in a cold world. You breathe deeply, and the air tastes of the mist, a clean, wet flavor with a hint of mud and reeds, the taste of the river distilled into every breath. The cold invigorates you without waking you fully. You remain in the dreamlike state of the late watch, alert but detached, observing but not analyzing. A single bird calls from somewhere in the reeds to your left, a short, tentative note that breaks the silence and then stops. It is not the full-throated song of a daytime bird, but a sleepy, experimental sound, as if the bird is testing whether it is time to wake. The note hangs in the air for a moment, then fades, and no other bird answers. The silence returns, but it is a different silence now, a silence that has been pricked and will not hold much longer. You listen for more calls, but none come, and you imagine the bird tucking its head back under its wing, deciding that the dawn is not quite ready. The reeds remain still, their tops lost in the mist, and the world waits a little longer. You shift your position, unfolding your arms and letting them hang at your sides. The movement breaks the thin layer of moisture on your skin, and you feel the cool air rush into the spaces your arms had warmed. You flex your fingers, making loose fists, and feel the blood move through your hands, a slow, pleasant tingle. Your feet are cold but not numb, and you rock slightly from heel to toe, feeling the solid stone under your soles, a reassurance of ground and gravity. The spear stands beside you, its shaft beaded with condensation, and you wipe your palm across the wood to dry it, a small automatic gesture. The bronze point above your head has lost its starlight gleam. The sky is too bright now for the metal to catch any reflection, and the spearhead is a dark shape against the grey, waiting for the sun to make it shine again. The mist continues its slow dance over the water, thickening in some places and thinning in others. A patch of open water appears near the landing steps, a dark circle where the mist has parted, and you see the surface of the river up close, a sheet of polished pewter that reflects the brightening sky in a dull shimmer. The circle expands, then closes again as new mist drifts over it, and the pattern repeats itself elsewhere, a slow shifting mosaic of revealed and hidden water. You watch this movement with quiet fascination, the mist's randomness creating a spectacle that is both beautiful and soothing. It is a performance that no one else is watching, a private show for the guard at the water stair, and you feel a small, quiet gratitude for being here to see it. The eastern sky is now a wide band of pale grey, its lower edge tinged with the faintest hint of something that is not yet colour, but is also not grey, a suggestion of warmth that has not yet arrived. The band grows as you watch, spreading upward and outward, diluting the charcoal above it into a softer slate. The mist over the river catches this light and begins to glow faintly, its white tendrils taking on a pearlescent quality that makes them seem even more insubstantial. The palm trees on the far bank are now clearly visible, their trunks dark against the pale sky, their fronds detailed enough that you can see the individual leaves hanging limp and still. Beyond them, the fields and the village remain hidden in shadow, but the line of the eastern hills is emerging, a long, low silhouette that defines the edge of the world. You can see, for the first time since sunset, the shape of the land across the water, and the sight brings a quiet sense of orientation, a return to the familiar geography of daylight. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. watching the mist of your exhalation join the mist rising from the river. The cold is at its peak now, the temperature having dropped as low as it will go before the sun begins its work. You know from experience that this is the coldest moment of the night, the brief interval when the darkness has fled, but the warmth has not yet arrived. Your body accepts the cold without complaint. You have stood through many such hours, and your blood knows how to keep you warm. You fold your arms again, but loosely, and continue your watch, your eyes moving slowly across the river, the mist, the emerging shapes of the far bank, and the brightening sky. The silence is broken again, this time by a distant sound that you recognize immediately, the first crow of a rooster, thin and far away, coming from the village on the east bank. The sound is so faint that you might have missed it if you were not listening, a tiny, brave call that cuts through the mist and the cold. It is a sound of pure routine, of a bird that knows the dawn is coming even before the sky confirms it, and it stirs something in you, a small primal response to the signal that the night is ending. The crow fades, and for a moment there is silence. Then another rooster answers from further away, its call even fainter, a ghost of a sound. You listen to these distant voices with a quiet sense of companionship. The world is waking up, slowly, piece by piece, and you are part of that waking, a witness to the transition. You stay at your post, feeling the weight of the spear in your hand and the solid stone beneath your feet, while the first subtle suggestion of light appears along the eastern horizon, a pale band so faint you could mistake it for a trick of tired eyes. But it is not a trick. It is the true beginning of dawn, the leading edge of the sun's disk that is still below the horizon but already sending its light ahead like a herald. The band is colorless at first, a simple brightening of the gray, but as you watch, a hint of yellow enters its lower edge, a warmth so subtle that you see it only in your peripheral vision, vanishing when you look directly. The mist glows in response, its white deepening to a soft ivory, and the surface of the river takes on a new sheen, moving from polished pewter to a luminous silver that catches the early light in long, smooth patches. The transformation is happening now, moment by moment, and you are here to see it all, a silent guardian at the edge of the water, watching the world return to light. The pale band above the eastern horizon continues to grow as you watch, spreading outward and upward with a slowness that belies the great speed of the turning earth. What began as a faint suggestion of light, so subtle you could mistake it for tired eyes, is now a definite presence, a wide strip of soft grey that stretches along the entire eastern edge of the world. The grey is not uniform, its lower edge, just above the dark line of the hills, has begun to warm, shifting from slate to a pale pearl that holds the memory of color without yet displaying it. The change is so gradual that you notice it only by looking away and then back again, comparing the present sky to the one you remember from a few moments before. The darkness that still occupies the western half of the sky seems deeper by contrast, a retreating tide that clings to the far horizon than the remaining stars. Those stars are few now, only the very brightest still visible, and they hang in the western sky like the last notes of a fading song, their light stretched thin by the approaching sun. The river transforms with the sky, its surface moving through a sequence of colors that you have seen many times but never tire of witnessing. The polished obsidian of the deep night has given way to a dark pewter, a heavy metallic gray that holds no reflection yet but suggests depth and weight. As you watch, the pewter lightens, its gray becoming infused with a pale glow from above, and the surface begins to gather the sky's brightness into itself, turning slowly from metal to water, from opacity to a luminous silver that catches the early light in broad, smooth sheets. The change happens from the east outward, the silver spreading across the river like a slow wave, advancing from the far bank toward your post. The water near the landing steps is still dark, a pocket of night that lingers in the shadow of the platform, but beyond it the river is brightening, its surface becoming a mirror again, not of stars now, but of the glowing sky. You can now see the individual ripples close to the bank, small concentric circles that radiate outward where a fish has risen to the surface. The circles are delicate, perfect in their geometry, and they catch the new light in thin, bright rings that expand and fade, overlapping with other rings from other rises, creating a pattern of intersecting arcs that shimmers for a moment and then smooths away. The fish that caused them is invisible, a dark shape that has already returned to the deeper water, but its presence is recorded in the rings, a brief signature of the life that teems below the surface. You watch the circles come and go, some close to the steps, some further out near the reed bed, each one a small, silent event that marks the river's slow awakening. The mist that blanketed the water during the coldest hour is beginning to thin now, its tendrils retreating into the shadows of the banks and the deeper channels where the air remains cool. The main surface of the river is clearing, the mist pulling back like a veil being drawn aside, and as it thins, the far bank becomes visible again. The palm trees that were soft grey shapes in the earlier dimness are now sharpening into detail, their trunks distinct, their fronds separating into individual leaves that hang motionless in the still air. Beyond them, the fields and the low mud-brick houses of the village emerge from the darkness, their shapes still shadowed but recognizable, a familiar landscape returning piece by piece. The single lamp that burned on the far bank is no longer visible. Whether it was extinguished by its owner or simply overwhelmed by the growing light, you cannot tell, but its absence is a sign that the night's vigil is over for others as well. Downstream, where the river curves past the temple enclosure, a new shape becomes visible, one that was hidden all night in the darkness. A fishing boat, still tied to a wooden post near the reed bed, sharpens into detail as the light increases, its form emerging from the general shadow like a photograph developing. The boat is small and sturdy, built of planks lashed together with rope, and it sits low in the water, its hull dark with moisture and age. A coiled rope lies on the deck near the bow, its loops neat and even, the fibre rough and frayed in places where it has rubbed against the post. A folded net rests amidships, its mesh a pale web against the dark wood, and beside it stands a water jar of red clay, its surface beaded with condensation. A single oar lies across the seats, its blade worn smooth by years of pushing against the current. The whole scene is still and silent, the boat waiting for its owner to emerge from the village and begin the day's work. You study it for a while, noting the details without any particular purpose, simply observing because observation is your duty and your habit. A heron stands motionless in the shallows on its thin legs, a grey statue among the reeds. You did not see it arrive. It must have flown in during the darkest hour, settling in the shallow water to wait for the first light. The heron is perfectly still, its long neck curved into an S shape, its sharp bill pointed toward the water, its eyes fixed on the surface with an intensity that is entirely patient. It is waiting, like you, for the world to wake up, and its stillness is so complete that it seems to be part of the landscape, a piece of driftwood or a cluster of reeds that happens to have feathers. The pale light of the early dawn catches the grey of its back and the white of its throat, giving the bird a soft, luminous quality that makes it look painted onto the scene. You watch the heron without moving, and the heron watches the water without moving, and the world holds this quiet tableau for a long, suspended moment. Then, from the distant village on the east bank, comes the first crow of a rooster, thin and far away, and the heron twitches its head slightly, a tiny adjustment that acknowledges the sound without breaking its concentration. The rooster's crow is followed by another, this one closer and louder, a full-throated call that rings across the water with surprising clarity. It is a sound of pure morning, a declaration that the night is truly over and the day has begun, and it stirs something in the air, a sense of awakening that spreads outward from the village. You hear a second rooster answer the first, then a third from further away, their calls overlapping in a brief, ragged chorus that fades into the general quiet. The roosters are the heralds of the day, and their voices carry across the river like a bell that only the dawn can ring. You draw a deep breath of cool morning air, still scented with damp earth and the clean freshness of the river, and you feel a small, quiet readiness for whatever the day will bring. Other sounds begin to join the roosters as the village wakes. A dog barks twice, short and sharp, probably a household dog greeting the first stirring of its family. A door opens somewhere, a soft wooden scrape that you hear across the water as a faint, dry sound. A voice calls out, indistinct but definitely human. A woman or a child speaking a few words that are swallowed by the distance before they reach you. The sounds are ordinary and unhurried, the sounds of a village starting its day in the same way it has started for generations, following a rhythm that is older than memory. You listen to these distant voices with a quiet sense of companionship. The world across the water is waking up, and you are waking with it, even though you have not slept. Your attention returns to the near bank, where the reeds are now clearly visible, their stalks a pale brown that will turn green when the sun is higher. The duck family you heard earlier is still there, the mother and her ducklings huddled together in a small clearing among the stems. You can see them now, the mother's head raised and alert, the ducklings still tucked into their own down, waiting for the warmth of the sun to stir them into activity. The reeds around them are wet with dew and mist, their leaves dripping small drops that fall into the water with tiny musical plinks. The sound of these drops is delicate and random, a soft percussion that adds another layer to the morning's quiet music. The light continues to strengthen, the pale grey of the sky giving way to a wash of pale yellow that bleeds upward into the fading stars. The yellow is not yet the gold of full sunrise. It is a soft buttercream color that hovers just above the eastern hills, its edges blending into the grey and the remaining blue of the night sky. The clouds, if there are any, are invisible. The sky is clear, except for the mist that still lingers in the low places. The yellow deepens as you watch, its center becoming richer, warmer, promising the sun that is still below the horizon, but climbing fast. The river catches this new color and transforms again, its silver surface taking on a faint golden sheen, a wash of pale amber that moves across the water in sync with the brightening sky. The reflection is not as sharp as it was under the stars. The light is too diffuse now, too general, but it gives the river a soft, warm glow that is beautiful in its own way. You notice that the heron has moved during your study of the far bank. It has taken a single, slow step forward, its thin leg lifting and then settling with the precision of a surgeon, and its neck is now extended slightly, its bill angled downward at a sharper pitch. The heron has seen something in the water, some movement too small for your eyes to detect, and it is preparing to strike. You watch the bird with a mild curiosity, wondering if you will see the sudden dart of its bill, the splash of the captured fish. But the heron does not strike, it only waits, its patience as deep as the river itself. After a while, it relaxes its neck slightly and takes another slow step, resuming its silent patrol of the shallows. The fish has moved on, and the heron must find another. The temperature has not yet begun to rise, but the cold is no longer intensifying. It has reached its lowest point and is holding steady, a cool, calm plateau that will persist until the sun clears the hills. You uncross your arms and let them hang at your sides, feeling the cool air move across your skin. The dampness of the night is still present, a fine layer of moisture on every surface, but it is beginning to evaporate as the light increases, rising invisibly into the air. You can smell the drying process, a faint earthy scent that mixes with the river and the reeds and the distant smoke of the village. It is the smell of morning, a combination of freshness and renewal that you have come to associate with the end of the watch and the approach of rest. You look up at the western sky, where the last stars are finally disappearing. The stretched line of pearls is gone, its faintest members having faded some time ago, and only a single bright point remains, a planet perhaps, hanging low above the dark hills. You watch that point for a moment, the last sentinel of the night, and then it too fades, swallowed by the brightening blue. The sky is now a dome of pale, washed blue, its deepest color still at the zenith, but lightening everywhere else, and the stars have all retreated into its depths, invisible but still present, waiting for the darkness to return. You feel a quiet farewell to the night, a silent thank you for its stillness and its stars, and then you turn your attention back to the river and the day that is arriving. The mist is almost gone now, reduced to a few thin patches that cling to the shadowed banks and the deepest parts of the reed bed. The river is fully visible from shore to shore, a broad golden-silver highway that stretches north and south, its current visible in the slow movement of debris and the subtle variation in the surface texture. You can see the flow clearly now. The main channel slightly to the east, where the water moves faster and the surface is faintly rippled. The back eddies near the banks, where the water turns slowly in lazy circles. The shallows near the landing steps, where the bottom is visible through a few feet of clear water. The mud, dark and smooth, the occasional stone glinting with mica. The river is a living map of currents and depths, and you read it without thinking, your eyes tracing the same paths they have traced 1,000 times before. Your watch continues, but the night is truly over. The world has returned to its diurnal shape, the shape of fields and houses and boats and birds, the shape of people waking and beginning their work. You are still the guard, still standing between the two pillars, still holding the spear that has been your companion through the long hours. But your role has shifted slightly. You are no longer the watcher of darkness and stars, but the watcher of light and life, the sentinel who sees the world come back from sleep. The change is subtle but real, and you feel it in the way you hold yourself. A slight loosening of the vigilance that was necessary in the deep night, a slight opening to the sounds and sights of the day. From the palace behind you, you hear the first sounds of waking, the distant grinding of a millstone, a servant calling to another across a courtyard, the lowing of an ox from the temple enclosure. These sounds are familiar and comforting, the sounds of your own world stirring into activity, and they blend with the sounds of the village across the water to create a single continuous texture of morning. The river flows between the two waking worlds, a quiet bridge that connects them without effort, and you stand at its edge, a part of both and a part of neither, the guard who belongs to the threshold. You rest the spear against the pillar again and place both hands on the cool stone of the parapet, leaning forward slightly to feel the morning air on your face. The warmth of the sun is not yet direct, but you can sense it coming, a subtle change in the quality of the light that promises heat. The day will be warm, perhaps hot, but for now the air is perfect, cool and fresh and full of the river's moisture. You breathe it in deeply, holding it for a moment before releasing it, a slow, measured breath that feels like a small celebration of the morning. The heron is still there, still hunting, still patient. The fishing boat is still tied to its post, waiting. The village is waking, the palace is waking, the river is flowing, and you are here, watching it all, exactly where you should be. The thinning mist that you watched with such attention during the first light has not continued to dissipate as you expected. Instead, it has reversed its course, thickening again into a dense white blanket that now obscures the river almost entirely. This sometimes happens on mornings when the air above the valley warms faster than the water below, drawing moisture from the surface in great quantities that the cool river refuses to release. The result is a fog that seems to grow rather than shrink as the sun climbs, a paradox of morning that you have observed before but never fully understood. The mist that had pulled back to the shadowed banks now rolls outward from the reed beds and the deep channels, spreading across the water in thick, slow waves that merge and overlap, building upward until they erase the far bank completely. The palm trees that were so clear a short while ago are gone, swallowed by the white, and the fields and houses behind them have vanished, as if they never existed. The world is reduced to a soft grey-white veil, in which shapes move without definition, and you find yourself leaning forward slightly, your eyes straining to find any fixed point in the shifting fog. The mist muffles all sound, turning even the lapping of water into a gentle hush that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. The current is still moving beneath the white blanket. You know this, but its whisper has been absorbed, its voice stolen by the millions of tiny water droplets that hang in the air. The sounds you heard earlier from the village, the roosters and the doves, and the opening doors, have been silenced, cut off, as if a door has closed between you and the far shore. Even the palace behind you seems more distant, its waking noises reduced to faint, directionless murmurs that you feel rather than hear, vibrations in the stone that tell you life is continuing somewhere beyond the fog. The quiet is deeper than any quiet of the night because the night had its own sounds, its frogs and crickets, and the soft rush of the current. This quiet is absolute, a white silence that presses against your eardrums like cotton wool, absorbing everything into itself. You hear the splash of oars somewhere out on the water, but see nothing. The sound is distinct despite the muffling fog, a rhythmic dip and pull that speaks of a small boat moving through the mist with deliberate slowness. The oars creak in their locks, a dry wooden sound that repeats with each stroke, and you can track the boat's progress by following this sound as it moves from left to right across your field of hearing. The splashes are soft, the oarsman clearly taking care not to disturb the water more than necessary, and the rhythm is unhurried, the pace of someone who knows the river well enough to navigate by memory and sound alone. You listen intently, your head turning slightly to follow the invisible craft, and after a moment you hear a man's voice call a short instruction, muffled and distant, the words indistinguishable, but the tone calm and conversational. No other voice answers. Perhaps the oarsman is speaking to himself, or to a companion whose reply is too soft to carry through the fog. The splashing continues, growing fainter as the boat moves downstream, and then, between one stroke and the next, it fades entirely, leaving only the white silence. You continue to listen for a while, but the boat does not return, and the river might as well be empty. The mist drifts over the platform, cool and damp on your skin, and you feel it beading on your forearms and on the back of your neck, tiny droplets that merge and run in slow trails down your skin. The linen of your kilt is thoroughly damped now, clinging to your thighs with a cool, insistent pressure, and the faience beads of your collar feel slick and cold against your collarbone. The leather of your sandals is soft with absorbed moisture, and the stone under your feet is slippery in places where a fine film of condensation has settled. You reach up and wipe your face with your palm, and your hand comes away wet, the moisture cool and clean, tasting faintly of the river if you touch it to your tongue. The fog wraps around you like a second skin, a cool, enveloping presence that blurs the boundary between your body and the air, making you feel somehow larger and smaller at the same time, diffused into the whiteness. You remain still, your spear resting against the pillar beside you, your hands loose at your sides. There is no need to move, there is nothing to do but watch, even though watching has become a nearly useless activity. The fog shifts and curls, its movements slow and hypnotic, revealing a patch of glassy water for a moment before closing again, teasing you with glimpses of the river that vanish as soon as they appear. One moment, you see the dark surface directly below the platform, the water slick and still, reflecting the pale grey of the fog. The next moment, the patch is gone, swallowed by a fresh wave of white that rolls in from the left and obliterates everything. The process repeats itself in different places, a patch opening here, another closing there, the fog's randomness creating a shifting mosaic of visibility and obscurity that your eyes follow without urgency. You think of the temple enclosure upstream, where the priests sometimes burn incense at dawn, and you wonder if the fog has reached them too, wrapping the columns and the statues in its white embrace, muffling the morning prayers. The thought is idle and passing, and you let it drift away into the fog, like everything else. The palace behind you is invisible now, nothing but a looming grey presence that you sense rather than see, a massive shape of stone and shadow that rises somewhere in the whiteness. When you turn your head to look, you can make out the nearest pillar, the one against which your spear leans, but the pillar beyond it is already a ghost, its edges blurred and softened, and the wall beyond that is completely gone. The courtyard you crossed earlier, the path between the mud-brick walls, the gate where the other guard stands his watch, all these have been erased, leaving only the small circle of stone around your feet and the two pillars that frame your view. You are an island in the fog, a single point of solidity in a world that has become vapor and silence, and the sensation is strangely peaceful, a removal from the demands of the visible world. This is the quietest part of your watch, when even the birds wait for the mist to lift. You have not heard a single call since the fog thickened. No rooster, no heron, no small bird testing the morning. The birds know that the fog is a time for waiting, a pause in the day's routine that must be accepted rather than fought. They sit on their perches among the reeds and the palm fronds, their feathers fluffed against the damp, their eyes half closed, conserving their energy for the moment when the sun finally breaks through and the world returns to its normal order. You feel a kinship with these waiting birds because you too are waiting, suspended in the white pause between night and day, between the watch and the rest that will follow. There is no impatience in the waiting. It is simply a state of being, a quiet acceptance of the fog's slow rhythm. The only company is the soft breath of the river's exhalation, wrapping the world in a cocoon of silence. You can feel that breath on your skin, a cool, moist movement of air that is less a breeze and more a presence, a slow tide of atmosphere that ebbs and flows without direction. It carries the scent of the river in its purest form, wet mud, crushed reeds, the faint clean tang of deep water, and underneath it all a hint of something ancient and patient, the smell of the Nile itself, a smell that has been the same for thousands of years. You breathe it in, and the smell fills your lungs and your mind, a grounding sensation that connects you to the river even when you cannot see it. The fog may hide the water, but it cannot hide its scent, and you take comfort in that small, constant presence. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the stone under your sandals, the solid reality of the platform that has held you through the long night. The cold of the stone has penetrated through the leather soles, and your feet are cool but not uncomfortable, a sensation that keeps you tethered to the physical world. You roll your shoulders, a slow, small movement that releases the tension of standing still, and then you settle back into your stance, your hands finding their familiar places, one on the parapet, one on the spear shaft. The spear is wet with condensation, its wood darkened by the moisture, and the bronze point is dull, its gleam hidden by a film of water. You wipe the point absently with your thumb, a gesture of maintenance that has no real purpose but feels right, a small act of care for the tool that has been your companion. The fog shows no sign of lifting. If anything, it seems to grow thicker as the minutes pass, its white deepening to a pale grey where the shadows linger. The patch of water that appeared earlier has closed, and no new patches have opened to replace it. You are surrounded by whiteness on all sides, a blank, featureless void that could be a few feet deep, or 1,000, there is no way to tell. The sensation is disorienting if you think about it too much, so you do not think about it. You simply accept the whiteness as you accepted the darkness earlier, a condition of the watch that requires no analysis, only presence. Your mind drifts into a state of quiet suspension, aware but not focused, alert but not searching, a calm, receptive stillness that mirrors the fog itself. From somewhere deep in the fog, a sound reaches you, so faint and distorted that you cannot identify it at first. It is a low, resonant note, a single tone that hangs in the air for several seconds and then fades. You hold your breath and listen, and after a pause, the sound comes again. A long, slow call that seems to vibrate through the mist. This time you recognize it. It is a conch shell being blown at the temple, a signal that the morning offerings have begun. The sound is ancient, a tradition that predates the palace and the platform and perhaps even the pillars themselves, and it travels through the fog in strange curving paths, its direction impossible to locate. It seems to come from everywhere at once, surrounding you like the mist itself. And then it fades, leaving a resonant silence that seems to hum with the after-echo of the note. You stand in that silence, feeling the vibrations slowly dissipate, and you think of the priests in their white linen, their hands raised, their voices chanting the same words that have been chanted since the first temple was built. The thought connects you to something larger than the fog, larger than the watch, a continuity of ritual that flows alongside the river, as constant and as patient. The conch falls silent, and the fog reclaims its hold, muffling the world once more. You notice that the light is beginning to change, a subtle brightening of the grey that suggests the sun is climbing higher behind the mist. The whiteness around you takes on a faint, diffuse glow, a pearlescent quality that makes the fog seem to shine from within. The temperature is still cool, but the promise of warmth is there, a hint of the heat that will come when the fog finally burns away. You look up, and the grey above you is lighter than it was, a pale silver that hurts your eyes if you stare too long. The sun is somewhere up there, a bright disk hidden behind layers of vapor, and its light is fighting to reach the ground. A slow battle that the sun will eventually win, but has not yet won. You lower your eyes back to the platform, to the wet stone and the two pillars and the spear at your side, and you continue your quiet waiting. A new sound emerges from the quiet, a soft, rhythmic dripping that you realize has been present for some time without your noticing. The fog has condensed on every surface, and now the larger droplets are beginning to fall, releasing from the stonework of the pillars and the parapet to land with small, liquid splashes on the platform. The drips are irregular, a drop here, a pause, 2 drops there, their rhythm dictated by the shape of the stone and the thickness of the condensation. You watch a single droplet form on the underside of the parapet, a tiny swelling of water that grows slowly, quivering with its own internal tension until it becomes too heavy and releases, falling to the stone with a soft plink. Another droplet begins to form immediately in the same spot, starting the process again, a miniature cycle of accumulation and release that repeats endlessly. You find the sound soothing, a gentle, natural music that fills the silence without disturbing it, and you let it become part of the background, another thread in the fabric of the foggy morning. The fog is not eternal, you know this. It will lift when the sun grows strong enough, and the river will return, and the far bank will reappear with its palm trees and its fields and its waking village. The world will resume its visible shape, and your watch will come to its natural end. But for now, the fog is the world, and you are content to be held within it, suspended in its white embrace, a quiet guardian in a quiet void. There is a peace in this suspension that the clear night did not offer, a different kind of peace, softer and more enclosed, a peace of hiddenness rather than openness. You let yourself rest in that peace, your breathing slow and even, your mind empty of all but the present moment, the cool air, the soft dripping, the grey-white light that surrounds you like a blessing. The fog that wrapped the world in its white cocoon begins to thin at last, its density unraveling from the top downward as the sun climbs higher behind the veil. You notice the change first in the quality of the light, which shifts from the diffuse, directionless glow of deep fog to something sharper, more angular, a light that seems to come from a specific place rather than from everywhere at once. The grey-white above you brightens in patches, and through those patches you catch the first hints of blue, pale and tentative but unmistakable, the color of the sky reasserting itself after the long white pause. The mist responds by thinning at its upper reaches, its edges becoming ragged and translucent, and you can now see the tops of the palm trees on the far bank, their fronds emerging from the whiteness like swimmers surfacing for air. The fronds are not yet green, they are silhouettes against the brightening sky, dark shapes that sway slightly in a breeze you cannot feel, and their appearance is a sign that the fog's reign is ending. You watch them with quiet attention, marking the slow return of the visible world. The sun strikes the tops of the palm trees first, a direct ray that breaks the gap in the mist and turns the dark fronds from grey to green in a single, brilliant moment. The green is vivid and fresh, the color of new growth washed clean by the damp night, and it stands out against the white fog and the pale blue sky, like a stroke of paint on a blank canvas. The ray widens as you watch, spreading downward along the trunks, illuminating the rough bark and the old leaf scars, and then it reaches the undergrowth below, where a tangle of shrubs and grasses appears, still shadowed but catching glints of light on their wet leaves. The transformation is happening quickly now, the fog retreating in visible layers as the sun's warmth pushes through it, and the far bank is reassembling itself piece by piece, a landscape returning from oblivion. The sun itself appears above the eastern hills, a red gold disk that is still soft enough to look at directly, its edges slightly blurred by the last veils of mist. It rises with the steady, unhurried pace that it has kept since the beginning of the world, a pace that you have witnessed from this platform more times than you can count, and each time it feels like a small, private gift, a spectacle performed just for the watcher who stands at the water's edge. The disk is large, larger than it will be at noon, an optical illusion created by the atmosphere, and its color is a warm, deep orange that holds no hint of the harsh white it will become later in the day. The light spills over the hills and across the fields, a wave of gold that advances toward the river, pushing the remaining shadows before it, and the world on the far bank becomes fully visible for the first time since sunset. The patchwork of fields, the low mud brick houses, the path that runs down to the water, the small figures of people beginning their morning tasks. The river catches the light all at once, flashing from silver to brilliant copper as the sun's rays strike the surface at a low angle. The water that was dark and mysterious through the night, that was grey and ghostly through the fog, now becomes a sheet of living fire, a broad shimmering expanse of orange and gold and pale pink that stretches from shore to shore. The reflected sun is a column of light on the water, a wavering, broken pillar that trembles with the movement of the current, and its brightness is such that you must squint slightly when you look directly at it. The surface is no longer the glassy mirror of the night. It is textured now with the breeze that has returned with the sunrise, a light wind that stirs the water into a million tiny wavelets, each one catching the light and throwing it back in a different direction, creating a dance of sparks that shifts and reforms with every breath of air. The river has fully woken up, and it greets the sun with a display of light that is both ancient and new, the same display that has greeted every sunrise since the Nile first found its course. Fishermen push their small boats out from the reed beds, their movements slow and practiced, their poles making soft plopping sounds as they enter the water. You see the first boat emerge from a gap in the reeds, a narrow craft made of bundled papyrus, its deck barely above the waterline, its occupant an older man who stands at the stern with a long pole, pushing himself into the current with patient skill. He wears a simple linen kilt, his skin dark from years of sun, and his head is wrapped in a white cloth that hangs down over his neck. The boat glides into the main channel, and the fisherman lifts his pole and lets it trail in the water, steering with small, precise movements of his wrist. A second boat follows the first, this one rowed by two younger men who sit facing each other, their oars dipping in unison, their rhythm smooth and easy. A few voices carry across the water in unhurried conversation, the words indistinct but the tone calm and friendly, the sound of men who have done this work together for many years and find comfort in each other's company. The boats spread out across the river, moving toward their familiar fishing spots, and you watch them go with a quiet sense of satisfaction, the return of the fishermen being as much a part of the morning as the sunrise itself. A small raft drifts by loaded with clay jars that are stacked in neat rows, their round bellies catching the golden light. The raft is a simple platform of logs lashed together, and it moves with the current, guided by an old man who stands at the back with a long steering oar. He wears a brown kilt and a string of blue beads around his neck, and his face is weathered and calm, his eyes fixed on the river ahead with the practiced gaze of someone who has traveled this stretch of water 1,000 times. The jars on his raft are of different sizes, some large enough to hold water for a whole household, others small enough to be carried under one arm, and they are all unglazed, their surfaces a warm reddish-brown that matches the color of the sunlit river. As the raft passes your post, the old man looks up and raises one hand in silent greeting, a small gesture that acknowledges your presence without needing words. You lift your hand in return, a mirror of his gesture, and for a moment the two of you are connected across the water, the guard and the traveler, each engaged in his own quiet work. Then the raft drifts on, following the current downstream, and the old man returns his attention to the river, his figure growing smaller until it merges with the golden light. Behind you, the palace stirs to life with a gradual, layered awakening that you hear as a sequence of familiar sounds. The first sound is the distant grinding of grain, a low, rhythmic rumble that comes from the granary, where the millstones are being turned by servants who have been awake since before dawn. The grinding is a constant background, a deep, earthy noise that you have associated with morning since you were a child running through these same courtyards. Above the grinding, you hear the call of a servant, a woman's voice speaking in short, clear sentences, perhaps giving instructions to the kitchen workers or calling for water to be drawn from the well. The voice is not harsh, it is businesslike and calm, the voice of someone who knows her duties and performs them without fuss. Another voice answers, then a third, and the courtyard begins to fill with the soft murmur of people moving through their morning routines, their sandals scuffing on the stone, their conversations brief and practical. The lowing of an ox reaches you from the temple enclosure, a deep, resonant sound that vibrates through the stone and into your feet. The ox is being led to the offering court, where it will be fed and watered and perhaps decorated with garlands for the morning ritual, and its call is a sound of patient acceptance, the voice of an animal that has lived in the temple since it was a calf and knows nothing but kindness. You have seen that ox many times, a great white beast with long curving horns and eyes as dark and calm as the river itself, and its lowing is as much a part of the morning as the grinding of the grain or the calls of the servants. The sound fades after a moment, and the temple settles back into its quiet rhythm, the priests moving through their rituals with the same unhurried care they bring to everything. Smoke rises from the palace kitchens, a thin column of pale grey that climbs straight up into the still air before bending and dispersing. The smoke carries the scent of baking bread, a warm yeasty smell that mixes with the cool freshness of the river and the dry dust of the stone, creating a fragrance that is distinctly morning, distinctly home. You breathe it in, and the smell stirs a faint hunger, a reminder that you have not eaten since the evening meal, and that your body will soon need food and rest. The hunger is not urgent. It is a gentle signal, a promise of the meal that will come after the watch is over, and you acknowledge it without letting it distract you from your duty. The day has begun in earnest now, but you remain at your post, watching the river fill with activity that unfolds in the same slow rhythm as the current, as predictable and peaceful as the sunrise itself. More boats appear on the water, some fishing, some ferrying people across to the near bank, some simply drifting with the current, while their occupants enjoy the cool morning air before the heat sets in. A family crosses in a small skiff, a man poling at the stern while a woman sits in the bow with a child on her lap, the child's small hand pointing at something in the water, its excited voice carrying across the river in high, bright syllables that you cannot quite understand. The skiff reaches the landing below your post, and the man ties it to the mooring post while the woman gathers the child in a basket, and then they all climb the stone steps together, their sandals making wet sounds on the damp stone. They pass near your post, and the man nods to you with a brief, respectful incline of his head, and you nod back, the silent greeting of strangers who share the river and the morning. Then they are gone, walking up the path toward the palace, their voices fading into the general murmur of the waking day. The heron that stood motionless in the shallows all through the dawn has finally moved, its patience rewarded with a fish that it caught in a quick, sharp dart of its bill while you were watching the raft drift by. Now the heron stands in the shallow water with the fish held crosswise in its beak, a silver shape that glints in the sunlight, and you watch as the bird tilts its head back and swallows the fish in a single, smooth motion, its throat expanding briefly before returning to normal. The heron shakes its head once, a quick, ruffling movement, and then resumes its patient stance, its eyes fixed on the water, already waiting for the next fish. The cycle continues, the same cycle that has continued since the first heron stood in the first river, and you feel a quiet kinship with the bird, another watcher of the water, another patient presence at the edge of the Nile. The light is fully golden now, the soft orange of sunrise giving way to a clear, warm yellow that fills the valley and makes the wet surfaces sparkle with reflected brightness. The mist is entirely gone, burned away by the sun, and the sky is a clean, pale blue that will deepen as the day progresses. A few small clouds have appeared in the east, high and thin, their edges touched with gold, and they drift slowly toward the north, following some upper current that has nothing to do with the breeze at ground level. The palm fronds are dry now, their green vivid against the blue sky, and they rustle softly in the morning wind, a dry, papery sound that is as familiar as your own breathing. The reeds along the bank are also drying, their stalks swaying in the current, and the ducks that sheltered among them all night have emerged into the open water, the mother leading her ducklings in a neat line that follows the edge of the bank, their small bodies leaving V-shaped wakes on the smooth surface. You take a final look across the river, a long, slow scan that begins upstream and moves downstream, taking in everything: the fishing boats, the reeds, the far bank with its palm trees and fields and houses, the temple enclosure where the conch may sound again at any moment, the landing steps where the skiff bobs gently on its rope, the heron still standing in the shallows, the water itself flowing steadily northward, carrying its burden of light and life toward the distant sea. All of it is as it should be, orderly and peaceful, a world that has woken gently from its rest and begun its daily cycle without hurry or disruption. Your watch has spanned the darkness and the fog and the sunrise, and now it has reached the full light of morning, the time when the day guard will soon arrive to take your place. You feel no impatience for that arrival. You are content to stand here a little longer, the spear in your hand, the sun on your face, the river before you, a guardian at the threshold between night and day, between sleep and waking, between the quiet of the stars and the busy music of the morning. The sun climbs higher above the eastern hills, its colors shifting from the deep red gold of dawn to a paler, brighter yellow that carries the promise of the day's full heat. The warmth returns to the stone under your sandals, a gradual penetration that you feel first as a slight lessening of the cold, then as a definite glow that radiates up through the leather soles and into the soles of your feet. The platform, which was cool and damp through the long night and the foggy morning, is now drying rapidly, the condensation evaporating in wisps of steam that you can see only when the light catches them at a certain angle. The two pillars that frame your view are warming too, their massive stone bodies absorbing the sun's energy and releasing it slowly, so that standing between them feels like standing near a banked fire, a gentle, ambient heat that wraps around you without intensity. The linen of your kilt is finally drying, its damp weight lifting from your thighs, and the faience beads of your collar are warm against your skin, no longer the cold discs they were in the deep night. Your body welcomes the warmth without urgency, a quiet acknowledgement that the cold hours are over and the day has truly begun. The river before you continues its steady flow, its surface now a bright shimmering sheet of pale gold that hurts your eyes if you stare at it too long. The fishing boats that went out earlier have settled into their positions, small dark shapes scattered across the water, their occupants patient and still, waiting for the nets to fill or the fish to bite. The raft with the clay jars is long gone, disappeared around the downstream bend, and the family that crossed in the skiff has vanished into the palace, their morning errand already underway. The heron has moved further down the bank, a grey shape in the shallows that you can just make out against the green of the reeds, still hunting, still patient, still part of the river's long, slow rhythm. The village on the far bank is fully awake now, smoke rising from several chimneys, small figures moving along the paths between the houses, a donkey braying somewhere in the distance, its call thin and far away, but unmistakable. The sounds of the day have filled the silence that the night left behind, and the world is busy again, a gentle, unhurried busyness that has nothing of haste or urgency. You become aware of a new sound behind you, a sound that you've been expecting and that you recognize immediately. Footsteps, heavier this time, the confident, measured tread of the day guard coming to relieve you. His sandals strike the stone with a solid, regular rhythm, and there is a crispness to his step that speaks of a man who has slept through the night and is fresh for his duty. You do not turn around immediately. You give yourself a last moment with the river, a last look at the water that has been your companion through the long hours. The current is the same as it was when you began your watch, the same steady flow that has not paused or changed, and the sight of it fills you with a quiet sense of completion. You have done your duty, and the river has done its, and now the watch will pass to another pair of eyes, another pair of hands, and the chain will continue unbroken. You turn slowly, your spear shifting in your grip, and you see the day guard approaching along the path between the pillars. He is a man you have known for many years, a man whose face is as familiar as the stone of the platform, and he carries his spear with the same easy competence that you have learned over countless watches. His linen is fresh and white, its folds crisp and clean, and his leather wrist guards are oiled and dark, their surface gleaming faintly in the morning light. His collar is made of red and blue faience beads, brighter than your own, and his sandals are new, their straps still stiff with recent weaving. He looks like the morning itself, clean and ready and full of the day's energy, and you feel a small, quiet contrast with your own appearance, your linen damp and wrinkled, your skin cool from the night air, your eyes heavy with the weight of the hours. But there is no shame in this contrast. It is the natural order of things, the transition from night watch to day watch, from the guardian of darkness to the guardian of light. He steps onto the platform and raises his hand in greeting, the small economical gesture that matches your own from the midnight change. You raise your hand in return, and for a moment the two of you stand facing each other, the spears upright, the pillars framing you both like a doorway between the watches. The morning light falls on his face, and you see the small lines around his eyes, the weathered skin of a man who has spent his life outdoors, the calm, steady gaze of someone who has stood this post 1,000 times. You know that he sees the same in your face, the same lines, the same calm, and the recognition passes between you without needing words. You exchange a few quiet words about the night, your voice low and unhurried, because there is no need to rush the report. You tell him that the river was calm through all the hours, that a felucca passed at midnight with a single lamp, heading downstream, its occupant wrapped in a dark cloak and showing no sign of trouble. You mention the fog that came with the dawn, thick and white, muffling the world for a long stretch before the sun burned it away. You tell him that the fishing boats went out at first light, that the raft with the clay jars drifted past, that the family crossed in the skiff and climbed the steps. You report that there were no disturbances, no alarms, no unusual sounds except the distant conch from the temple, and that the palace remained quiet through the night, its sleep undisturbed. He listens without interruption, his eyes moving across the river as you speak, his head nodding slightly at each point, a silent confirmation that he understands and accepts the report. When you finish, he asks a single question about the water level, whether it has risen or fallen since sunset, and you tell him that it has fallen slightly, the mud bank exposed by a hand's breadth more than it was at evening. He nods again, satisfied, and then he speaks a few words of his own. The granary guard reported nothing unusual. The temple enclosure is quiet, the ox has been taken to the offering court. The morning offerings have begun. The exchange is complete, a smooth transfer of awareness that has taken only a minute but has covered the entire night. He steps forward and takes his place at the parapet, setting his spear against the pillar in the same groove that your spear occupied, and you step back, making room for him, feeling the space of the platform shift from yours to his. You pick up your spear for the last time, its shaft worn from your hand, its weight familiar and comforting, and you hold it for a moment longer before handing it over. He extends his free hand and takes the spear from you, a simple, wordless gesture that marks the official end of your watch. The spear that was yours is now his, and the duty that was yours is now his, and the long chain of guardianship has added another link. You feel a quiet satisfaction in this moment, a sense of work completed and trust fulfilled, and then you turn and begin the walk back along the path toward the guard quarters. The path between the mud brick walls is different now from when you walked it in the evening. The sun has risen high enough to reach into the narrow passage, casting a warm golden light on the left-hand wall, while the right-hand wall remains in cool shadow, a stripe of brightness and a stripe of shade that run parallel all the way to the courtyard. The stones underfoot are dry and warm, no longer holding the lingering heat of the afternoon, but the fresh warmth of the morning, and your sandals make a soft, even sound as you walk. The date palms beyond the wall are fully visible now, their fronds green and gold in the sunlight, and you can hear the rustle of small birds moving among them, their chirps high and bright, a different music from the cricket song of the night. The air smells of warm stone and dry dust, and the faint sweet scent of baking bread from the kitchens, and the combination is so familiar that it feels like a welcome, a quiet greeting from the world you left behind when you began your watch. You pass through the narrow archway and into the courtyard, where a cat stretches in a patch of sun, its orange fur glowing like copper against the pale stone. The cat, is a palace cat, one of the many that hunt mice in the granaries and sleep on the warm stones of the terrace, and it regards you with half-closed eyes, its tail twitching once before it settles back into its doze. You step around it carefully, not wanting to disturb its rest, and the cat does not move, its breathing slow and even, its small body a picture of perfect contentment. The sight of it makes you smile slightly, a small private expression that no one sees, and you continue on your way, past the storerooms that are still in shadow, their heavy wooden doors closed and bolted, past the small shrine where a single oil lamp burns before a statue of the household god, its flames steady and yellow in the dimness, past the water jars lined up against the wall, their clay sides beaded with condensation from the cool night. The guard quarters are a low building near the outer wall, a simple structure of mud brick with a flat roof and narrow windows set high in the walls. You push open the wooden door, which swings inward with a soft creak, and you step into the cool, dim interior. The room is quiet and empty, the other guards already at their posts or sleeping after their own night watches. The reed mats are arranged along the walls, each one with a small wooden headrest and a folded blanket of coarse linen. Your mat is in the far corner, near the high window, and you cross the room slowly, your footsteps soft on the packed earth floor, your body beginning to feel the weight of the long night now that the duty is over. You place your hand on the wall to steady yourself as you kneel down, and the cool, rough surface of the brick is grounding, a reminder of the solid world that will hold you while you sleep. You lie down on the reed mat, stretching your legs out fully and feeling the pleasant release of muscles that have been standing for hours. The mat is thin but comfortable, its surface worn smooth by your own body over many rests, and the wooden headrest fits the curve of your neck, lifting your head just enough to keep your breathing clear. You pull the folded blanket over your body, the linen cool and light, and you settle into the familiar position of sleep, your arms at your sides, your legs straight, your breathing slowing. The room around you is quiet, the only sounds the distant murmur of the palace and the soft, rhythmic breathing of another guard who sleeps on a mat across the room. The high window above you is a rectangle of blue sky, and through it you can see a sliver of the Nile, glittering now in full daylight, its surface a bright, moving ribbon of gold that catches your eye and holds it. You lie there, watching that sliver of river, and your mind drifts back through the night, the sunset that began the watch, the darkening waters, the stars emerging one by one, the felucca with its single orange lamp, the midnight change of the guard, the deep stillness of the frog chorus, the mist and the cold hour before dawn, the sunrise that turned the river to copper, the waking of the village and the palace. All these images pass behind your closed eyes like a slow, calm procession, a river of memory that mirrors the river of water outside. You feel a deep, quiet gratitude for the night, for its peace and its beauty, and for the duty that allowed you to witness it. The gratitude is not a strong emotion. It is a gentle, pervasive sense that something good has happened, something simple and true, and that you were part of it. Your breathing slows further, becoming deep and regular, the rhythm of rest taking over from the rhythm of the watch. The sounds of the palace fade into a soft, distant hum, a background that your mind stops hearing as it drifts towards sleep. The sliver of Nile in the window is the last thing you see, a bright, living presence that has been there since before you were born and will be there after you are gone. And the thought is not sad but comforting, a reminder that the river will continue its watch long after you have fallen asleep. Your eyes close and the quiet images of the night repeat behind your eyelids, the dark water, the stars, the patient lapping against the bank, the heron standing in the shallows, the mist curling like breath, the sun breaking through the palm fronds. Each image is a small, calm note in a song that has no end, and you let them carry you downward, gently, slowly, into the deep water of sleep. Your body settles into the mat, your muscles releasing their last tensions, your mind emptying of all thought. The room is quiet, the palace is quiet, the river is quiet, and you are quiet, a small sleeping presence in a world that will wake and sleep and wake again in its own patient rhythm. Outside, the day-guard stands at the parapet, his eyes on the water, his spear resting against the pillar and the river flows on beneath the climbing sun, carrying its burden of light and life toward the distant sea. The watch continues, as it always has and always will, and you are part of it still, even in sleep, a link in the long chain that stretches back into the past and forward into the future. But for now, you rest, and the river watches over you as you watched over it through the long, quiet night.